Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to the much delayed and much eagerly anticipated season finale of the sim racing magazine GT4 Change Season 8, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing, and proudly sponsored by none other than Oris Digital. Indeed, it's been a month since we were meant to hold our 8th round of the season, but after a month's delay, due to technical circumstances and also trying to find a slot that would be available to the majority of drivers, it is good for us to be back, and it is good for us to be able to come here to Road America to bring the curtain down. Indeed, where better to wrap up the season than in the picturesque countryside of Elkhart Lake in the American state of Wisconsin. 4.24 miles in length, this is a classic as far as American road racing circuits are concerned. Not quite one of the oldest of the circuits in the USA, but it's up towards there in terms of its age. But a very unique trait to this circuit internationally is it's one of a very limited number that has been absolutely unchanged all the way since its opening in 1955 when it comes to layout. And as they say, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And this is truly an unbroken power circuit, and it's why it brings many a GT racing machine to its asphalt each and every year. Simply put, 4.04 miles, plenty of long straights, plenty of sweeping bends, but do not forget there's a tight and twisty middle sector which enables Corr cars to show their abilities as much as muscle cars have got their ability to flex their muscle down the long straights. And therefore strategy, slipstream and overtaking at the right time will be absolutely key, although to be fair we could see some very smart overtaking in the pit lane when it comes to strategy. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you all to this live broadcast from Circuit Side as you tune in today, catching up with all the racing action on the way place you can do so. And as of course on youtube.com and search for Porsche Productions or PWP, and you can be tuning in there. And if you are tuning in right now, don't be shy, feel free to say hi and let us know how you're doing in the YouTube chat. Indeed, we'll give you a few shout outs over the course of the day. In the content booth, you have myself, my name is Paul Walsh, and I shall be your host and commentator for this season, indeed for this season finale. In terms of our schedule for today, times in British Summertime, that's BST. We're Universal Coordinate Time +1, UTC +1, as we can see, an approximate around about 13 minutes time. We'll make our way into our final qualifying session of the season, 15 minutes in duration, all drives out of the circuit looking to go for pole position, and what a good lap in qualifying could definitely prove rather valuable when it comes to the race, and that race due to get underway at approximately 25 to 9 this evening, and it will be a 60-minute feature race as per usual to see the curtain come down, and at the end of it, we will be crowning our provisional champions. Now, of course, we do effectively have our provisional overall drivers champion, and in the teams championship as well, we do effectively have our champions elect in the teams. So the big focus today will be on the AM Championship to see who takes that home. But of course, there's always the question of the runner-ups. But given the fact we've had a month since we were meant to go racing for the final time, it's only appropriate, of course, we regale you with the story of the season after 7 rounds, and in particular bring you up to speed with what happened last time out when we did make our way to the Nürburgring combined, or known in German as the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke. And so, let's give you a quick recap of the season, shall we? Season 8 saw us compete across 7 rounds so far, and we've made our way from Imola to Long Beach to Virginia International Raceway to Mount Panorama to the Hockenheimring Baden-Württemberg to Fruxton, and last out in round 7, we've made our way back to the European continent for our final trip in mainland Europe, and it was at the Nürburgring combined all the way back on the 26th of May. It's crazy to think that was a month and a half ago, but such is how the time has flown by. But there in round number 7 was a bit of a similar situation to what we have here today at Road America, because in our driver sim racing rigs they were experiencing a heat wave on that day in round number 7. We did see sim racing rooms reach well over 30 degrees centigrade. I do believe some reporting almost 40 degrees centigrade in the hottest of rooms, and well, it was a tough round, no doubt about it, but 19 plucky drivers made the trip to Germany, although Guy Edwards did pull out after qualifying due to not feeling 100% because of the heat and not wanting to risk causing an accident, and fair on Guy to do so, but he gave it a try. But in qualifying we saw the home hero of Nils Corr take the overall pole position by just shy of 2 tenths ahead of Matias, Penttilä, and the top 4, which included Matias in 3rd and Stuart Reynolds in 4th. We've got to see the top 4 separated by only a second at what was the extended circuit. Indeed, crazy to think a second separating them at a shorter circuit such as Road America, whereby you'd imagine the mileage is effectively a quarter of that you'd see at the Nürburgring. Well, a second in the Nürburgring would translate into only 2 or 3 tenths at Road America. But in AM, meanwhile, it was pole position for Lee Berridge with a magical lap, which was the best part of almost 7 tenths faster Mark Johnson, and Ian Anderson also looked impressive to take 3rd place in the AM class. But when we did go racing, well, we got to see what was an absolutely brilliant attempt for Nils Corr to try and break away early on in the race in the lead, and that was over laps 1 and 3, and then he suddenly just got on lap 3 that he'd worked his front tyres too hard. So suddenly, the leading quintet of Corr, Reynolds, had moved from 3rd to 2nd on the opening lap and continued to push forward over the course of the laps that followed. Well, then we saw Matias Penttilä and Matias 10 with them, and also Ben Idris Abdullahi, all of the quintet bunched finished up, and it meant as we went into the strategic period, well, suddenly it became a little bit more of a focus around who was able to maintain their pace. That leading quintet suddenly became a leading trio, with Reynolds, Corr and Penttilä breaking away from Tem and Idris Abdullahi on lap number 4, and the strategic split was to pit either on laps 4 or 5, and the lead trio all opted for lap number 5, and Stuart Reynolds retained the lead in the end, coming out to the pit lane with Matias Penttilä jumping ahead of Corr in the pits. So Nils Corr there to try and fight his way forward. He managed to find his way past Matias Penttilä, but he could not find a way to close the gap to Stuart Reynolds, and it was Reynolds who was able to hold on for the win. But of course, if that was the story overall, what about in AM in the race at the Nürburgring? There we got to see Lee Berridge attempt to drop the rest of the AM field, but he found himself entwined in the overall battle with Daniel Osler on lap 1 and Dennis van Beelen on laps 2 through to 4, and it meant the rest of the AM group could gradually segue its way up to the back of Berridge. So suddenly Ian Anderson, Mark Johnson and Steve Codman all caught up with him, and Johnson gambled and changing all 4 tyres in the pit lane on lap 4, which would have worked out for him if not for a major error on lap 5 and hardware failure on lap number 6. All the bad luck poured in for Mark Johnson, and meanwhile that quartet became a trio. Steve Codman did struggle for late race pace on laps 7 and 8, and Anderson came alive to attack Lee Berridge in the end when it became a duo, and Anderson made the move for the lead of the AM class into turn 1 on lap number 8, and then held on for the rest of the race to take his maiden win of the season. The Scotsman was absolutely over the moon with it, no doubt about it, when we caught up with him in the post-round interview room. So therefore, it was an absolutely brilliant day at the Nürburgring, and no doubt about it. And we're here today. We make our way then to Road America, and it is all about today seeing this season out and seeing exactly who are going to be our top 3 in each of the championships, and most critically, who is going to be our AM champion. But of course, as we make our way into this round, we need to regale you with the standings. And let's start off with the overall Drivers' Championship standings. Here we can see it's Stuart Reynolds who leads the way then for Fury Sims, 152 points, and the mathematics says that he has successfully defended his title with a round to spare. He cannot be caught, and therefore he is here today, and he's just here to enjoy the race at this point. However, the bigger question is, who is going to be second? Is it going to be Matias Penttilä for RD Simsport, or is it going to be Satellite Racing's Nils Corr? They are your 2 main competitors for it, with Penttilä holding an advantage of 9 points there, and he will be the favourite to finish runner-up, and albeit the only thing will be, can he get on top of his tyre degradation struggles that we did see over the course of the racing at the Nürburgring and the closing stages? And of course, Nils Corr needs to try and find a way to manage his tyres better in his Ford Mustang in the early stage of the race, as that was his weakness to prevent him from winning on home soil. Matias Tem, he could throw a bit of spanner in the works of the pair of them. He sits in full for Fury Simsport. He can, in theory, steal away second place, but he'd need Penttilä and Corr both to have a difficult day in the office, and for him to have a perfect score may not be realistic, but to be fair, everyone can dream. Ben Idris Abdullahi sits 4 points behind him for Satellite Racing as they battle for the 4th place spot. It's a further 6 points to Daniel Perry for Paddock Motorsport. Guy Edwards, Stephen Codman, Rob Sharp and Chris Jennings complete your top 10, as other AM drivers there gradually bring themselves closer and closer into the top 10 group, and Holly Carbadine sits in 11th place there for Rowan Worthy on 53 points. 2 behind him is the combination of Dennis van Beelen and Lee Berridge, and then we do see Mark Johnson and Paul Goffin there together in 14th place, equal on points and separated only by result countback, with Johnson ahead of Goffin. They're on 50 points apiece, and then it's 48 to Ian Anderson ahead of Daniel Osler, with Martin Brendel, John Roberts and Heinz Mayer completing the top 20. In 21st place, Kim Such and Nils Cooler ahead of Ryan Penny and Jules Gardner, and then we will see none other than Andy Chell ahead of Gary Toole and Simon Povey, albeit all 3 of them are on 13 points and separated by result countback, and on 0 points in the overall championship, it's Andy Marsden and Matty Wild. But then to the AM Drivers' Championship standings, and here we can see in the AMs, this is the one that is still up for grabs in terms of the top prize. Is it going to be Rob Sharp, or is it going to be Stephen Codman? Now, Mark Johnson is effectively out of the hunt at this point, in the fact he could achieve a perfect score, and he would need both his roles to have a nightmare day if he was to have a remote chance of taking this. So, Johnson in theory could do it, but he's very likely going to be a 3rd player in this. But of course, Trackmouse Racing have 2 players in the game, and Stephen Codman is their player number 1 to try and take the crown, but Mark Johnson could have a role to play. But Rob Sharp leads by 4 points for Brewers Racing, and well, right now it's looking close. But for Sharp, it was an anonymous day of racing in Germany at the Nürburgring, whereby he started 5th, finished 4th in the class, and well, he just was not on the pace of the leading group. Stephen Codman, by comparison, well, he was a bit off the pace of Lee Berridge in qualifying, but he did pick up the pace as time went on, although he did drop off towards the end of the race in the second stint, and he took a valuable podium that has enabled him to close the gap somewhat. But of course, Mark Johnson, who sits in 3rd place at the frustration of all the bad luck striking once again, and it could have been a round which would have seen him take home a win, and with it give himself a bit of a better opportunity to take the championship crown. Well, now he really does need luck to be fully on his side, and for everyone else to roll snake eyes. But meanwhile, Ollie Carbadine sits in 4th place, only a point behind for Rowan Worthy, and it was a challenging round for him as well, starting 8th and finishing 7th in the end in the AM class, with Paul Goffin there completing the top 5, another point behind. So for Mark Johnson, he hasn't got a boring race ahead of him, because right now he needs to try and secure 3rd place, only 2 points separating at third, fourth and fifth, and it's a further 13 points to Lee Berridge for Boosted Motorsport. Now, we should point out, we have been informed earlier today that Boosted Motorsport's Lee Berridge and also John Roberts will not be here today. Unfortunately, the timing of the rescheduled round does clash with another series they're competing in, so we wish them all the best luck as they compete, and a huge thank you to both Lee Berridge and John Roberts for joining us for this season. They've been absolutely brilliant, I'm sure you all agree, and we do hope to see them back in a future season of racing here at Sim Racing Magazine. But therefore, it does mean that Ian Anderson probably has an opportunity to take 6th place of a Berridge today, only 2 points behind. He's 12 ahead of Martin Rendell. Jules Gardner and Kim Such complete your top 10, both on 64 points. And behind the RS Racing Dry, it's 4 points to Heinz Mayer in 11th, with John Roberts, Ryan Penny, Andy Chelton, Nils Kula completing your top 15. And it's Gary Toole, Andy Master, and Matty Wild who complete the standings. But at the very top, some of you may be wondering, what are the AM Championship permutations then? Well, here are the permutations for Sharp versus Codman. Rob Sharp is the leader, of course, so if he finishes first or second, he will be champion. That's a given. He cannot be beaten at that point. It's mathematically impossible. If he takes pole position and finishes third, he will be champion as well, because there would effectively be a tie should we potentially see what would be Codman take the win. And in such a situation, we would see Sharp win based on result countback, as he'd have the greater number of wins. That's how we would do it. Now, if we do see Sharp finish third, then Codman must finish first and take pole position. And, well, meanwhile, what we can see there as well is the fact that is taking the pole position and finishing fourth for Rob Sharp. It's Codman who must finish first. If we do see Rob Sharp finish fourth, then Codman must finish either by taking pole position and finish second or higher, or he must finish first, and it goes on there. We've broken it down all the way to Rob Sharp finishing down to 5th place, but of course there's plenty of permutations, and we'll keep you up to date with those, ladies and gentlemen, as the racing does go on. But just a reminder, if there is a tie, a provisional tie, in such a tie-break situation, we would be doing it based on result countback. It would go to wins firstly, and it would be Rob Sharp who would take it, because he will have the greater number of wins, even if Codman wins today. So those are the AM Championship permutations. And as for the Teams Championship, well, here we can see Fury Simsport on 252 points. This is practically a formality at this point. In theory, you can imagine that Satellite Racing could take it back. And in fact, as we double check the numbers here, we can confirm, in fact, Fury Simsport have taken it. They are your champions elect, and Satellite Racing cannot steal this away based on the way the scores come. So on those 252 points, Fury Simsport have taken the crown, and right now, Satellite Racing seem very comfortable for second. So Paddock Motorsport, meanwhile, they sit in third, only 8 points ahead of Trackmouse Racing, and that's where the big fight is today in the Teams Championship, with 67 Motorsport in 5th place, ahead of Rome Worthy by 18 points. But look at the fight for 6th, and suddenly you can see there's 2 teams joint at 74 points, both Rome Worthy and Boosted Motorsport, although Rome Worthy will likely have this now, given that Boosted Motorsport will not be attending this round. Axis Simsport sitting 8th on 72, only 2 points behind, so don't rule them out. And then we do see Sim Racing Magazine and RS Racing completing your 10 teams. But the big fight, Paddock Motorsport versus Trackmouse Racing, who will be third place in the run-up proceedings. Well, with the championship standings, we now come on to our prizes from the previous round. And, well, our round 7 middle winners are thus. A huge congratulations firstly to none other than Stuart Reynolds, our overall race winner. And what it does mean for him is coming into this round, well, it's now 5 overall winners' medals for Stuart Reynolds, the most wins of anybody overall, to the one of Dan Perry and the one of Matias Penttilä. He's been absolutely unstoppable, and congratulations. Can he make it 6 and have a 75% win rate? We'll have to wait and see. In the AM class, meanwhile, Ian Anderson takes his first medal of the season. Indeed, 3 wins for Rob Sharp, 1 for Paul Goffin, 1 for Mark Johnson, 1 for Lee Berridge, and now 1 for Ian Anderson, but argue perhaps the one that everybody wants, the one at the Nürburgring. That doesn't belittle any of the other wins, to be fair, but it's always a special one when you do it at the Green Hell. Then the Safest Driver Award. Rob Sharp takes it. He becomes the first driver to take a repeat award in the Safest Driver category. Given the fact he now has 2 medals, whereas everyone else who has won it has 1, being Jules Gardner, Nils Corr, Matias Penttilä, Mark Johnson and Stuart Reynolds. And as for the Move of the Race Award, well, it is now another 1-time medal winner. Indeed, we've not had a repeat winner of this award all season. It is Daniel Osler. And well, to fill you in exactly on the move he did make to take it, ladies and gentlemen, well, let's bring you up the replay from the Nürburgring and just hold on to your hat with this one, because it is very impressive. And a very brave move being made there by none other than Daniel Osler, and well, taking that move on Lee Berridge at the Nürburgring and able to make it work. And we do apologise there for the slight cut, running out a bit of tape there, but indeed a beautiful move, no doubt about it, for Daniel Osler, and in the end getting it all done versus Lee Berridge, starting the move at Brunchen and completing at the ice curve, and while that limited number of overtakes, not down the Dottinger Haar that we saw at the Nürburgring throughout round number 7, and congratulations to Daniel Osler for bringing on home that medal. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, well, of course, we now look ahead into what will be none other than our upcoming round of racing, and to talk a bit more about it, we do have our host circuit. It is Road America's full course and located at the Elkhart Lake in Sheboygan County of the US state of Wisconsin. 4.04 miles in length, and a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but the absolutely fantastic track maps contained within it. As we see, a grand total of 14 corners, all married together there by long straights, but you do have that brilliant middle sector of turns 5 through to 10, culminates with a kink at turn number 11, the high-speed corner, the trickiest one on the circuit, and therefore for those in the Porsche 718 Cayman GT4, they'll have a good opportunity through there to try and get the upper hand on the more power-focused cars, such as the Ford Mustang and the Mercedes AMG. But rather than talk about the circuit in totality here, well, let's give you a quick reminder of the rules, and let's go back to circuit side afterwards, because our qualifying session is getting underway. Now, setup-wise, just to remind you, this is a fixed setup series, and all drivers run the iRacing fixed setup, and fuel loads will be restricted to 42%. Qualifying is an open format, whereby it means all drivers out on the circuit together trying to go for pole position. They have to be mindful of each other, but they can try to tow off each other, and there's always some tactics to be involved. As for our race, there is a commencement via a double-file rolling start, as is a tradition of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge, and there are no mandatory pit stop requirements, so our drivers choose when they come into the pit lane. Now, given we have had an update in the 2026 Season 3 iRacing update, which has seen the pit stop regulations change for so many series, we are running the same regulations that we have seen all season, because of course our season was due to complete before the 2026 Season 3 update arrived. It arrived on the day of round number 8 as originally scheduled. That was a slight scheduling error, but we've worked through that. We do apologise for that, but we have set the pit stop regulations to what we had prior to that update, so fuel and tyres will be done in parallel, not sequentially. That is one of the big changes that's happened in the update, but for consistency, we have reverted back to parallel for this round to make sure our drivers are racing as per what they're used to in the rules and regulations. There is one fast pair available should a driver need to use it, and if we see the instant points start to build up, well, at 18, it will be a drive-through penalty, and at 25, it will be disqualification for our drivers, and all race stewarding shall be conducted post-race. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we now look back to circuit side, and it is definitely time for qualifying here, as we do see Daniel Osler making his way on around. Indeed, several drivers making the way on around right now, and looking quick already as this qualification session continues on its way. We're already the best part of 2 minutes in, but to be fair, they're all on their outlaps at the moment, and the Road America circuit with a lap time of over 2 minutes. This is definitely going to be one of those sessions whereby qualifying times are precious, and they won't get many of them. But as the drivers continue the way on around, how important will a good qualifying time be to success here today? Well, you can overtake Road America, but you need to think about when you overtake. And the reason for that is, as we do see Dennis Van Beelen making his way in towards turn number 14, is that if you start to fight with another driver and you're in a pack of cars, you're going to lose the cars in front, and when you lose them, you lose the slipstream. And particularly for cars that are not quite as strong on power, for example, let's say the Porsches, such as that commanded by Rob Sharp, well, they need the slipstream of the power cars on the straights to stay with them, as otherwise they're going to be using a huge amount of fuel to try and power the way along, and suddenly they find themselves being relegated out of battle. So you want to qualify quite high, and then you want to really pick your rivals and those who you fight with over the race distance, and we can expect that a lot of the racing after the opening couple of laps will be very strategic, and it will be very much the enemy of my enemy is my friend, as the saying goes, whereby you'll see drivers form partial alliances or temporary alliances in order to work together to catch up to a common rival, only then to then suddenly break up their allegiance right at the end of the race, or a critical moment such as when the pit stops are due to get underway. That's not to say that taking pole is not going to have disadvantages, and indeed being right on the front row, which does give you the opportunity to lead the race away, and that's something that likes of Idris Abdullahi will be hoping for, the Mercedes AMG driver. We're very keen to get to the front row, of course, enjoying a big season-long championship battle with none other than his rival of Matias, and he'll be hoping to get the upper hand one more time this season if he can, in order to secure that fourth place. But as he heads on around, well, Stephen Codman, one of our two big battlers for the purposes of the AM Championship. He is, of course, the challenger, whereas Rob Sharp is currently the defender as far as they go. And the Trackmaster Racing car, a brand new livery on the car for this season finale. Absolutely love to see that from Stephen Codman, the Trackmaster team. And we're going forward full patriotism there. That has got, I do believe, of what is red, white and blue. And as they say, what does it mean to you? And well, the question is, it means a lot here to the Ford Mustang driver and the team, because they've gone all in on the Stars and Stripes. As he makes one around their lovely livery, it must be said. And congratulations and a commendation to livery designer for that. And let's take a look to Mark Johnson's car. Indeed, they've also done it for the Aston Martin V8 Vantage of Mark Johnson. I absolutely love to see some what is dedicated artwork there for specific rounds. And well, if we awarded points for it, we would, ladies and gentlemen. But we don't here, but they definitely captured my eye, and I'm sure they've captured your eye as well. But as Johnson makes his way on through the kink, well, right now trying to latch onto the distant toe there of what is the satellite racing Ford Mustang and Nils Corr, and trying to see if he can just stay within a second. The game plan is the slipstream of these cars does extend up to 2 seconds. So if you start a lap around 1.5 seconds behind the car in front, you will gradually gain some time on the straight, and it could be worth the best part of half a second over the course of the lap, if not a bit more. So that's what Johnson's trying to do here. He's trying to give himself the best possible lap, and he's really set himself up well here as they make the way in towards turn number 14. But as they do, I think we are going to see some initial laps go on the board. Paul Goffin's the first one to get a valid time, and it is a 2 minute 17.148. And well, that's an AM time in the Porsche versus Ian Anderson's own AM time in Aston Martin, 2:17.562, 4 tenths behind. But we're really waiting for those big times to come in, and there is one. Nils Corr, 2 minute 15.956. Mark Johnson, 6 tenths behind in there, 2:16.530. Guy Edwards in his McLaren 570S, he goes down to 2:15.900, half a tenth quicker than Nils Corr. So these are the times that come in. New livery there for the 6M Motorsport driver as well. I do believe a bit more red compared to purple. Does really stand out there and just accentuates the car a little bit more. And when he makes his way through turn at number 3. As he does so, we'll get you an on-board lap with one of our drivers very shortly as well, ladies and gentlemen, to give you a feel for how you do a lap at Road America and a dedicated power circuit. All these drivers pound their way on. And Guy Edwards, well, now he's found the draft there of, I believe, that is Stuart Reynolds in the number 1 just in front of him. And of course, Reynolds has no pressure on him right now. There's no team's championship up for grabs, given the fact that Fury Sims will have taken it around to spare on 252 points. And of course, what we have seen is that he has already wrapped up his defence of the crown from Season 7. He is now a 2-time champion. Well, of course, it is subject to him finishing this round and making sure he stays in our good books. If he was to act a little bit erratically, not saying he would, to be fair, but of course, there's always the thing, you finish the season as you start with good intentions, and it all comes down to making sure he does finish this race without any major penalties, because of course we can deduct points if we do find the driver has been a little bit too mischievous, although to be fair, I don't think that's going to happen from Reynolds or any of our drivers here. They've all been absolute gentlemen throughout the season, and we've absolutely loved to see it, and that's what Sim Racing Magazine series is all about. In fact, we do focus on what is the quality of the racing rather than the quantity of drivers. We don't need big grids to have great racing, I can tell you that, ladies and gentlemen, and we have seen that all the way through this season. But as we do see Mark Johnson make his way onwards, well, he has fallen a little bit away from Nils Corr, who is now turning up the tempo. And that's the thing as well. When you do find someone to tow after, you've got to make sure that you're able to stay with them. If you can't, and they pull away, then you find yourself in a bit of a lonely land. But right now, we are about to get a lap from Dennis Van Beelen, and we're going to jump on board with him here for another flying lap as he makes his way down towards turn number 1. And so he goes full initially, but now how far can he go this time as he gets ready for the opening bend for Chicane Online Racing? Looks to his left-hand side, braking 150 metres from corner apex and down to 3rd gear. Apex in about 85 miles an hour, he now heads through the kink of 2 and in towards turn 3. Braking to the left-hand side there, looking for what will be the 2 board, and braking out 100 metres from corner apex. You want to late apex that corner as much as possible. Takes a lot of curve there. Now to be careful about that in the race when there's a lot more fuel, because it could really unsettle the rear of the car. And now making his way down towards turn number 5. It's a long run as he comes through 4A and 4B for the Marine Sweep. As he gets ready now for the braking zone here, looks to his right-hand side for the hairpin. And we can see there, he'll brake just before the 2 board, coming all the way down the gearbox to 2nd gear. Decides not to go into first to avoid wheel spin. Now heading up the hill. Over the blind rise under the Corvette billboard, and as he brakes for a quarter he cannot see at turn number 6, and braking about 125 metres from apex down to 2nd gear. Bring the car sharply over to the left to open up the right-hander, and at this point it's a lift and coast through here. You don't want to touch the brakes whatsoever, because he'll unsettle the car. Goes a bit wide there, that may have just invalidated a lap. We will see what happens as he brakes his way now down to the very sharp 90-degree left-hander at turn number 8, a corner to catch out even the best of drivers there. And off of Van Beelen as he now makes his way into the carousel, and as he comes on through. Tight apex initially, you can cut this corner many a way. today, he decides to go for a tight entry and a tight exit rather than an open entry to a tighter exit. That's going to cost him a bit of time in the proceedings, but it could be a good defensive line in the race. Coming up towards the kink now and fast through this right-hander. A bit of a lift there. He hasn't quite got the aero package on the car to carry all the speed, and that's what happens when you carry too much speed. You find grass instead, and Van Wielen at this point backing off and will decide to let the car behind him go, and that is the car. I do believe that is the Porsche from Paddock Motorsport. And its way on through, and that is going to be none other than Daniel Osler, still to get a lap on the board. And Osler looking very quick in the opening sector, but he in turn has invalidated his lap, so he tucks back in. And I think the game plan here for Daniel Osler, he needs people to draft off of, given the straight line speed deficit of that Porsche Cayman, and will make his way in towards turn number 14. Right now he's got a bit more work he needs to do with 6 minutes left on the board. Now if you do follow your GT4 racing and you are a Porsche fan, you may have heard the news recently about what is coming in 2027 from Porsche, and that is they are sacrificing what is their GT4 program with the Porsche Cayman 718, and they are instead bringing a 911 GT4. That's right, you heard me correctly. They are bringing the 911 into the GT4 class for 2027 onwards, and it is a major break given the Cayman has been at the centre of their GT4 program and product offering for customer teams for the best part now, if my memory serves me correctly, of 8 years. But we will see a 911 GT4 as of next year, and it will be gradually replacing the Cayman, and it will phase out the Cayman gradually. Very interested to see how the 6-cylinder machine gets on, as we do see our Cayman machine right now heading onwards. And remember, of course, the Cayman, I believe, mid-engine rear-wheel drive. The Porsche 911 GT4 will be retaining the rear-engine rear-wheel drive drivetrain, so that's going to be a big shift there as well. As we see Daniel also getting a bit too close for comfort on the back there of Chris Jennings. Jennings in his Ford Mustang, he can just choose to drive normally here if he thinks he's on a good lap, and he can prove it. Well, he does not need to step aside for Daniel Osler. Osler can be over his back like a bad rash, but this is qualifying. This is not a race, and therefore it is the responsibility of the chasing driver not to interfere with the lead driver's lap should the lead driver be on a lap. Now, of course, he cannot tell necessarily Daniel Osler, but what is a good tell is when the guy in front does not get out your way and is holding some very smooth lines. They may be slower than you. That doesn't matter. What matters is the fact they are entitled to the road. And Daniel Osler backing off there, letting Chris Jennings open up a bit of a gap. He wants to follow that Ford Mustang around, but he needs to start it about 2 seconds behind because he is a quicker driver through the corners, and that's the problem. When you're in a car that's smarter on the brakes and quicker through the bends versus a power-hungry car, well then suddenly you've got that dilemma, which is that middle sector. You close up hand over fist. But right now, as Jennings makes his way onwards, currently 9th fastest overall. They're still waiting for the time for Osler to come in, but otherwise all of our other 16 drivers have set lap times thus far. And as we do see Jennings rolling his way out, well, the fastest lap now sits in the hands of Nils Corr by still half a tenth there to Matias. Indeed, half a tenth the theme here for the battle on the front row. 2 minute 15.400, literally dead on the dot. Well, how about that? That's an impressive lap, no doubt about it. As he makes his way out of Canada Corner at turn number 12. And I believe there's a bit of an interesting story about Canada Corner. We'll come back to that shortly. I believe it's a folklore story rather than a confirmed story. But it's not because that corner is the closest to Canada. I believe it's actually when the very first racing occurred here. It's all to do with the Canadian spectators that turned up, but more on that a bit later. As meanwhile, Nils Corr makes his way up towards the timeline. What's it going to be this time? He has gone purple in what is the penultimate sector. As he crosses the timeline here, is it going to be a great final lap? Final sector lap? Yes, it is. A 2:15.119. Now 3 tenths faster than Matias, as we do see Mark Johnson improving in the background there. A 2:15.901. But Stephen Codman right now, currently the fastest Ram drives out. The full fastest is Guy Edwards. Moves back into second place, 2:15.350. So Edwards finding time. They're all finding time out there. But understandably, there's a few who are not. Daniel Osler, a black flag, is in the pit lane. So Osler's going to be starting from the back of the field at this rate. I believe he may have sped into the pit lane. That's what's triggered the black flag. And unfortunately for him, that is going to be his qualifying session over because he would have to go back out to come into the pit lane to serve what would be a drive-through penalty for the speeding, to then go back out onto circuit. But by the time he's done that, he'll have no more flying laps available. So Osler is not going to get a lap time together. And that's going to be a very frustrating situation there for the Porsche driver. But as everyone makes the way onwards, well, we can see that Kim Such, meanwhile, when he makes his way on through turn at number 14 here, he gets ready for what is likely to be his final qualifying lap of the season. Osler is leaving the pit lane, so he's going to go back out there, but unfortunately he will not get another lap together, as we understand it. As such, heads towards the line. He's currently 13th fastest overall. Can he make his way further up the order in terms of those times? The answer is going to be, it does look as though, yes, he will find some more time at 2:17.323, but it doesn't move him any further up the timing tower. But where is Rob Sharp? Well, Sharp right now, he is in third, the AM's 7th overall. And in terms of those permutations we mentioned earlier on, well, the big story there, of course, being the fact that should we see Codman take pole position, well, it would result in essentially a position whereby he would still need to take home what would be second place. Would take home the win, and it would be for none other than Rob Sharp to take third. And in doing so, it would then go the way of Stephen Codman. So right now, it does look as though Stephen Codman doing the right thing, which is getting the bonus point for that pole position, and Rob Sharp will be starting at third place, but Codman could be on his course to win it here. But remember, there's a race ahead of us, and indeed qualifying is just one lap, which is worth a point, but you never know what could happen at the end of the season. It could come down to that very 1 point. But Sharp makes way around. He has one more tour of the circuit to see if he can improve. He's definitely pushing very hard at the moment, getting the most out of the number 68. Boris Racing, and as he makes his way in towards turn number 14, of course, the team name dedicated to the company he runs, Boris Watches. We'll see a little bit more about them later on in this broadcast today. Indeed, a bit of an SRM theme with regards to some of their product offerings. But right now, Rob Sharp heads towards the timing line. What's it going to be this time? And the answer is going to be... It is not an improvement for Rob Sharp, but what we are going to do is jump on board and see if he can improve on his final flying lap. So in towards turn number 1, and here you'll see the Boris Racing driver will brake later compared to most of the other cars out on circuit, given the fact he's got the corner speed but not the straight line speed. Goes a little bit wide of apex, that causes him to lose a couple of miles an hour in towards turn number 3, but here he'll try to go for late apex to make up for it, and he does so. Lovely line there from Sharp, absolutely perfect. And now flat out he goes, but here you can see the Porsche as it makes its way down towards turn number 5, a little bit lethargic in acceleration, but that is because of the way the power is set up, and the fact that the Porsche does have a bit less engine power on the balance of performance compared to the front engine rear drive cars. Now breaking his way, they're using the 2 board exactly as his marker, 100 metres on the corner, through the corner there, second gear, and balancing the throttle as he comes out, and up the hill he goes into the blind Corvette bend. In towards turn number 6, takes a very early apex there, and the idea being he wants to use the curve to pull the car around. And now in towards turn number 7. A bit of a lift off there, almost bounced off the limiter, but upshifting to 4th gear in order to avoid the limiter being touched. And now making his way down towards turn number 8 in 5th gear, braking his way down to 2nd. Takes a lot of curve there. You can see right now how quick this Porsche is on rotation through the corners. Now into the carousel. This should be bread and butter for this car and for the driver as he makes his way a bit deep. Rob Sharp there going very wide. He does V-shape it off in the end, so he will get away with that. Well, I think the car just swept away from him. Rather than trying to overturn the car, he decided to let the car roll out. Now into the kink, and will turns in at the last possible moment. Smooth line. Does he keep it in track limits? No, he goes the grass to Sharp, and the Boris Racing driver, that'll be an invalidated lap. He won't be improving any further in this qualifying session. He pulls over there. He knows what's happened, and well, he knows there's no value in carrying on. As Guy Edwards meanwhile makes his way onwards, and will Sharp staying in 3rd in the AM class, 9th overall, just ahead of Ian Anderson, who's just come across the timing line, I believe, and well, no, in fact, he's gone out there for an outlap, and he's a bit further behind what is Guy Edwards, who we see on screen. The driver who's just gone across that timing line, well, that was none other than Jules Gardner. So, as we do see Guy Edwards making his way into the final corner, he's currently 3rd fastest. Can the 6-7 Motorsport McLaren make its way up towards the front row? The answer is no. He'll stay 3rd at best. Ian Anderson on that outlap, so he cannot improve. Stuart Reynolds, meanwhile, this is not good news here for the Fury Simsport driver. To be fair, there is no pressure on him today, but right now Matias going to be on that front row with Nils Corr joining him for pole position. What about Stuart Reynolds? He's currently almost 4 seconds off the pace, and well, I don't think that's by design there, as he now hops and skips his way through turns 13 and 14, because there's a bump in the road as you come out to turn number 13 in towards 14, and here he goes then to the line. He's in the draft, and well, he's had a purple middle sector, has Reynolds. Is this going to put him right up the front? The answer is going to be as he crosses that timing line. And well, in the end, the lap comes in, but it is not a valid lap there from Stuart Reynolds, so he does not improve. Reynolds is going to be starting 15th today. And well, what a shock to the system that is for Stuart Reynolds. And well, something tells me, ladies and gentlemen, that he's probably now going to be essentially looking at doing a bit of a last to first style challenge. He'll be starting 15th. That's not too far from the very last spot on the grid. That'll be 17th place going to Daniel Osler. But right now, that is a shock to the system. But qualifying is complete. It is Nils Corr who takes pole position, back-to-back pole positions for the German driver from Satellite Racing. And here we join joined on the front row by Matias, the other Fury Simsport driver. And well, of course, keeping in mind that for Nils Corr in particular, third in the championship at the moment, and Matias only 12 points behind him. But for Corr, he wants to beat Matias Penttilä. But I do believe we are missing the RD Simsport driver here today. So Nils Corr set himself up for success in taking that second place in the overall Drivers' Championship. But as we do look to the scenic view, qualifying is definitely done. Stephen Codman taking the pole position, 4th overall. A perfect start to the day for him in his title battle with Rob Sharp. And Mark Johnson will be 7th, that's 2nd in class. And Rob Sharp will be 3rd in class with 9th, just ahead of Ian Anderson. The two of them separated by what was 5/10 in the end. So impressive from Rob Sharp as qualifying is complete. And now, of course, we make our way into the 5-minute warm-up session. Now, with it being a 5-minute warm-up session, what we will see is that our drivers have an opportunity here. Consider this to be our equivalent, of course, before it became mainstream in the 2026 FIFA World Cup in the United States of America. Of course, also co-hosted by Canada and none other Mexico, where they brought in this thing called the hydration break. We did it first here at Sim Racing Magazine. We brought in the 5-minute warm-up period, and this is our equivalent of the hydration break, but it's also an opportunity for our drivers here. If they do want to make any final tweaks to the car, although to be fair, the only thing they can tweak on these cars is the brake balance. They cannot touch anything else because it is a fixed setup series, which means everyone is required to run a setup on their car, all with the same restriction on the fuel tank, or within the balance of performance parameters as well as provided by iRacing as part of the GT4 category. Behind Mayer, well, I think they're making a bit of an error as he makes his way through turn 3, I think, readjusting himself to what is having fuel in the back of that Mercedes. Remember, they can't take the fuel out in qualifying, they have to burn it out of the car by simply doing as many laps as possible. And this is a circuit where fuel usage is going to be high by default, because we have so many long straights. You are on the throttle around here, not quite as much as you are, say, Daytona or Le Mans, where you're spending the best part of 80 to 90% of the lap full throttle, but you are on full throttle for around about 70% of the lap here at Road America, and that uses up more of the fuel tank. You've got a lot of acceleration zones, low gear acceleration zones and high gear. The higher gear ones don't use as much fuel typically, and so you get to the top end of every gear. It's those low speed acceleration zones where you see the most fuel being used, and you do have a few hairpins which will see that. Turns 5, 8 and also around at Canada Corner at turn number 12. Whilst we do have 3.5 minutes, I will take a glass of water shortly, ladies and gentlemen, to have my own personal hydration break here in the commentary booth. But Canada Corner, what's the story behind that? Now, from what I recall, the reason why turn 12 is known as Canada Corner, and again, this is not because it relates to the country of Canada in terms of the way the corner is pointing and how close it is. I believe in one of the very early races held at Road America, all the way back in 1955 when it opened up. I do believe it was towards the end of what was none other than the 1950s. Well, there was a big contingent of Canadian fans that made the way specifically to that corner. And, well, they were caught on camera in terms of photos taken at the time. Plenty of Canadian flags out there and that. But the reason why I got the reputation of being Canada Corner is because supposedly the Canadian fans were incredibly respectful, cleaned up after themselves after the race was done, and left the corner in such a tidy state that essentially people thought the corner was owned by Canada, given the fact they'd taken so much pride in the corner. That's the story I've been able to find, although it's very hard to find a story as to why Canada Corner is known as Canada Corner. You may know, and to be fair, if you know the better story than I do, feel free to point out in the YouTube chat here. It's always a learning day here in the commentary booth, as every day and every lap is a learning lap for our drivers. And even at the end of the season right now, when they think they've mastered these machines, they're always learning and trying to pump out some more time. But Guy Edwards, of course, back in 3rd in this qualifying session, and we have seen some very sharp performances from Guy. Of course, Thruxton in the changeable conditions, a very interesting story there for him, in the fact that many were wondering whether he was going to be the one to take the win at Thruxton. It didn't quite work out, and in terms of who did take the win at Thruxton, well, that was none other in the end than, I do believe, what was Stuart Reynolds in round 6, and it was Guy Edwards who kept him honest. But as we did see the circuit dry a little bit when the rain stopped early on, that's when Guy Edwards' pace came about, and then suddenly, as the circuit got too dry, he lost his pace. And then we had the rain come back a bit later on. He sort of got his pace back and then lost out again. It was a really specific window in which Guy Edwards in his McLaren was able to find the pace at Thruxton, and Stuart Reynolds was able to steer clear of danger and bring home that win. But still very close between them. But as we do see Edwards having a bit of a rallycross moment there at turn number 8, we'll definitely test in the limits and also seeing how he recovers the car. We'll hopefully won't get to see him make too many errors in the race. But Daniel Oster for Paddock Motorsport, a sub-contingent of the Fury Simsport team, as he goes for a spin there at turn number 5. A very frustrating qualifying session, and I suspect this is going to be one of those races whereby He's going to have to try and work out everything he can in order to be able to make his way forward. Albeit, I get the feeling Osler, a very resourceful driver, it must be said, and I wouldn't be surprised if he finds himself into that top 10 early on and potentially chasing after some of the other pros. But do keep in mind, of course, the fact he's got to overcome that straight line speed deficit that his Porsche Cayman will have. The same for Paul Goffin, not quite the qualifying session he was hoping for. He'll be starting 7th in the AM order. In fact, 6th in the AM order when I can do my maths and read off a script. But as he makes his way around, Ollie Carbadine will keep him company, no doubt about it. As he tries to make the one around now, we're not too far away from going to the grid. So we're going to take our hydration break here in the content booth, ladies and gentlemen, and get ourselves set for what is our final race of the season. And well, we've become fully hydrated, we're all set to go, and once the warm-up comes to the clock of 0, well, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for our final race of the season. It is time for our much-delayed season finale here at Road America. Who is going to take the final win of the season over in AM, and who will be our AM champion? Rob Sharp, or will it be Stephen Codman? For all that and more, it's time to find out. And so as our drivers make the rounds of grid for the final time this season, this is how they'll all line up in round 8 of 8 of Season 8 of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge, brought to you by iRacing and sponsored by Oris Digital. Nils Corr makes it back-to-back pole positions. He may be far away from Germany, but to be fair, does feel just like home, taking pole for Satellite Racing, with Fury Sim Sports Matias joined on that front row, a 10th behind. From the Dutchman, it was then a further 10th to Guy Edwards, taking another strong qualifying performance, and he'll start in third place there for 6-7 Motorsport. From the number 7, it's the number 5, AM pole sitter Stephen Codman for Trackmouse Racing, and he wants that win, no doubt about it. He's giving himself every opportunity by taking pole, and keep in mind now, if he takes the win with it, he will be crowned your AM champion for this season. Benidras Abdullahi is 5th, and Satellite Racing driver looking to try and get close to the Corr to try and help his teammate out, and for the both of them to try and push forward for the top 3 in the overall Drivers' Championship, with Dennis Van Beelen giving him company on the third row for Chicane Online Racing, the two separated by what was only 37 thousandths. Mark Johnson starts 7th there, second of your AM drivers for Trackmouse Racing, and then we will see Chris Jennings alongside him for Axis Sim Sports. Rob Sharp will be your third place AM starter for Boris Racing, knowing he's got to try and make sure Ian Anderson, who completes the top 10 alongside him, does not find a way through. Like the See Next Tuesday drive was half a second behind in terms of pacing qualifying, but in turn he was the best part of a 10th clear of Heinz Mayer for Rome Worthy as the partial formation lap gets underway. The South African driver joined on the 6th row by SRM's Paul Goffin, and then we do see Ollie Carbadine for Rome Worthy in the company of Kim Such for OS Racing. The two good friends off the circuit go battling once again on the 7th row. Next going to be the pro of Stuart Reynolds for Fury Sim Sport with his worst qualifying performance of the season, so he's going to have to try and come through the field, and it'll be Jules Garner in 16th place for Sim Racing Magazine, with Daniel Osler completing a starting order in 17th there for Paddock Motorsport with no lap set. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this formation lap is almost complete. That's the rundown of your 17 starting car field, and as the field now makes its way for the last couple of quarters, it's over to Nils Corr to take us to the green. And there he goes, Nils Corr gets us underway, and just like that, the final race of the season rolls to life as Nils Corr goes nice and early there, catching many by surprise. But Matias and Guy Edwards immediately tuck into the draft as they make their way down towards turn number 1. All the field now will fan into a line as quickly as they can. They'll be too wide initially, but everyone will want the draft to the next car in front. But into that opening braking zone they go. Stephen Codman there holding on to the AM lead, with Dennis Van Beelen and Benidras Abdullahi behind. Meanwhile, some gains made already. Ian Anderson squeezing ahead of Rob Sharp there, and Will Sharp was always expected to perhaps lose a place at the start, given the accelerational nature of the start of this race. But right now, look at this, and that's Matias Tem. He's going for it straight away here. Nils Corr having to massage his tyres a little bit. Meanwhile, Matias Tem takes the lead around the outside at turn number 3. Here comes Guy Edwards, swaps from one side to the other. Edwards wants it in the McLaren right now. Perhaps he thinks he can run away with this one. We'll have to wait and see what the game plan's going to be here. He looks one way, then the other. They're coming down in towards turn number 5. Is it going to be 3 wide here? Edwards wants it, but he decides not to. The door was too shallow. So coming through that left-hander of turn number 5 right now. Tem and Corr still side by side. Up the hill they go, in towards the next braking zone at turn number 6. It's Tem on the inside, Corr on the outside here. Great respectful racing, but at this point, Corr's going to back out of it. Meanwhile, further back, Heinz Mayer looking for an attack here versus what will be none other than Daniel Osler, as Osler has cleared him. And well, now he's got a rolling roadblock in front of him as Osler of Stuart Reynolds and Paul Goffin as Daniel Osler tries to come through, using the space created by Reynolds there as a little bit of a passing object as they make the way down in towards the hairpin here, under braking, and will drive safely in towards turn 8. A very tricky corner on cold tyres here, and this is where we can expect some spins all the way through the race. But as they make the way underneath the barbecue advertising there, well, right now they're feeling very hot under the collar as Paul Goffin being pushed through the carousel, and well, Heinz Mann has to back off, not realising the SRM Porsche was going to be so slow through the corner. It is a piggy by looks of things, but look at what that does. It stacks Ollie Carbadine onto him. Here they go too wide into the kick, and Mayer immediately backs off as Carbadine on a very tight line for the first time through. Somehow makes it through the corner there, but I get the feeling he realised he was in such a tight line and backed off the throttle nice and early. Albeit he's able to thank Heinz for that one, because otherwise, if Mayer had carried all the speed into the corner, he would have forced Carbadine to essentially have to slam on the brakes or run wide to the barrier, and nobody would see that. But as they make the way out of Canada corner, respectful racing is shown, and right now we look to the front of the field here where Matias has cemented that lead come the end of the open lap, but it may only be for a brief period of time before the foundations are dug up here, because Nils Corr right now, of course, in the draft. Well, now it becomes the game. Do you overtake? Do you sit in the tow? Or do you go for a hybrid of back and forth between yourself and the car in front? Well, only these drivers can make the choice there, no doubt about it. But first lap's in, and plenty more to come here at Road America. But we can see there some great gains being made. Stuart Reynolds already up from 15th to 11th place. Daniel Osler 1.3 seconds behind, also try to follow. What Reynolds does, Osler has to do as well. That's got to be his mantra here today as he continues to try and give chase. But of course, Rob Sharp now feeling a bit of pressure from Reynolds as they come down in towards turn 3. Reynolds takes a cheeky peek up the inside. That's not going to work. And in the end, Rob Sharp just holds his ground here. Stuart Reynolds being very respectful. He could dive onto these moves, but I think right now he wants to make sure he doesn't break the draft train of Eddie Carr here. He doesn't want to essentially force these moves to happen. As I suspect Rob Sharp won't be too impressed. And remember, Rob Sharp is an AM Championship contender. Reynolds has already sealed his championship, so therefore, I don't think he wants to spoil any of the AM contenders. Looks up the inside here, goes to the move, and Sharp then goes to turn in, finds the Mercedes is fully there. It's not going to work out. Meanwhile, we can see Nils Corr under pressure with Guy Edwards. Edwards puts his nose in at turn number 6. That's just to get Corr a little bit off balance, and Stephen Codman behind, the AM leader involved. Now, just to give you a reminder of how points are scored. In the overall championship, it is your overall position. Regardless of your class, every driver, pro and AM, competes in the overall championship, and every place they gain is worth more points. Meanwhile, in the AM championship, we remove the pros in the equation and we reset the point scale, and therefore the AM winner, regardless of where they finish overall, takes the maximum possible points, and we do it based on the class positions only. So therefore, for the likes of, say, Ian Anderson, Rob Sharp, Mark Johnson, Stephen Codman, they've got to play the constant game here. Do they fight for an overall position or let it go? Of course, there are two sides to the coin. If you hold overall position with a pro behind you, you can use that pro as a buffer to the next AM car. Conversely, if that pro doesn't want to be used as a buffer and has got their own ideas, they may start to fight you for overall position, because of the pros, of course, they can only score points in their overall considerations. But Stuart Reynolds up the inside of Ian Anderson there into Canada corner, another place gained. That puts Anderson wide. Here comes Rob Sharp, looking for an opportunity to ride a bob the Aburis racing driver. Now, as he makes way up the hill, of course, Sharp's got a bit of a difficult task here. Daniel Osler's for close company, and I wonder whether Sharp looks in his mirror, realises it's Osler, and decides, right, fellow Porsche driver, perhaps let Osler, who's a little bit quicker than that Porsche, typically based on the average lap times we've seen this season. Typically, the Delta has been about 4 attempts at their best performance times. Or does he let Osler go and use Osler as a little bit of a pace car for himself? That's, of course, one train of thought. We look back here, and you can see Sharp right now puts the car slightly into the road, I think sending a message to Osler, which is, look, don't make a move. But Osler says, no, I'm going to do it anyway. And up the inside he goes, and look at the Delta braking there, and Osler in the end braking about 30 metres later than Sharp, and I think Sharp might have lifted and coasted a little bit, but Daniel Osler in the end swung to the inside. And on that move, smooth move there for the Paddock Motorsport driver, and will leave 314 now up into 11th place. His next target is Ian Anderson, and Rob Sharp be hoping he can follow Osler past. But when's that move going to happen? Well, based on how he out-broke Sharp in towards turn number 1, I wouldn't be surprised it's going to happen down here at turn number 5 after they made the way over the Sargento cheese board. And right now, it's going to be another position on the chopping board, as there comes Osler up the inside. He goes for it immediately, and onto the brakes there through that left-hander, and that is going to be done. But it opens up the door for Sharp. Ian Anderson goes deep, and Sharp right now on the inside here. He's going to hold on there inside. He's not going to let Ian Anderson close the door whatsoever, and Rob Sharp taking his opportunity. He has to here. He's got to get the places back if he wants that and crown. As right now, Stephen Codman, who we saw fall down the time tower due to an internet discontinuity, he is back, but hopefully that's not a sign of something to come. As Ian Anderson looks up the inside, in towards the 90 left. It's not going to work out there. Anderson Ian tried to fret, but realised too soon that it was a very tight line, and there was no way he was making that braking zone unless he broke the best part of 30 metres early, which he did. So Anderson trying to make the move, learn as he goes, and now he's got Paul Goffin for a bit of company behind, as we see Oli Cobardine and Heinz Mayer being brought into the equation. But back to Codman then. Here he is, making his way down the back stretch, heading up towards Canada Bend for the third time of asking. And as he does so, he just has Lahi and Van Beelen behind. But you can see the top three are now starting to gradually open a small gap. It's 1.2 seconds on average at the moment, and that gap is going to be triggering what will be a reaction there for Idris Abdullahi and Van Beelen. The full process there, mine will be that right now Codman is costing them time, and they do not want to lose time on the leaders, because if the leaders get to 2 seconds or more, suddenly the draft becomes less noticeable. In fact, it disappears at 2 seconds, and based on the way it's modelled in iRacing, but it is quite close to modelled to real life, to be fair, and suddenly their battle for what could be a chance to win becomes a battle for full place overall instead, unless they can cook something up on strategy, which is always possible. New fastest lap of the race at 2 minute 15.145 for Nils Corr. Stuart Reynolds, a 2:14.753. Well, there's Reynolds demonstrating the fact that he hasn't lost the pace here at Road America. He just didn't get a lap together in qualifying. And right now, all over the back of Chris Jennings here as they head down the hill in towards turn number 3. Jennings on the outside, Reynolds on the inside, and Reynolds will take that place just like that. Jennings is not going to offer a fight. He doesn't want to disrupt the rhythm and the train that lies in front of them. As they come down the next long straight, well, now Jennings here will just simply sit behind as we ride on board with your number 22 for AXA Sim Sports, sponsored by Sim Coach the Team, the strong coaching provider on the sim racing space. And right now Chris Jennings here thinks about it, but decides, no, I'm not going to go for a move. There's no point about it. I might as well just sit there and follow them through. But meanwhile, Tim, Corr, Edwards, they're getting closer and closer together here as Idris Abdullahi has found his way past Stephen Codman for fourth place. So a change has occurred. That's opened up another 3 attempts to the leaders right now. But I wonder if Idris Abdullahi will put the hammer down at this point. Perhaps he'll be on the radio to Corr to say to him, is there any chance, Nils, you can annoy Matias a little bit, as in Matias 10, because if he can put some pressure on, it will cause the top 3 to fight, and suddenly that will bring fourth through to 9th place back into that leading pack. It suddenly condenses together the 2 groups, so there might be a bit of teamwork that's needed here if Satellite Racing want to get both their drives into a chance of a podium finish here today. But of course, it's one thing to say you're going to do it, it's another thing to do it, of course, at the high speeds these GT4 machines do run at. Stuart Reynolds right now, still pushing on here, dropping Chris Jennings a little bit, getting ready for a move of Mark Johnson. Now Johnson here will hold on, as meanwhile, what on earth has happened there to what is Rob Sharpford back? In fact, he slipped away for this group right now, falling back to the best part of 4 seconds when you see him in the rear of the pitch. I thought the Porsches were a bit closer than that, as meanwhile, Chris Jennings going a bit deep under braking there, but gets it back together. But you can see now these drivers, they're all warmed up, they're all very keen and eagle-eyed, but I think they're all getting a little bit caught out by the concertina effect, and also what is the increased amount of draft and dirty air into those braking zones, and that overspeed, it definitely does add up. But come the end of lap number 4, going on to lap number 5, we look back from the rear of your race leader of 10 for Fury Supersport in the 3-1-2. Here comes Corr this time. Now does the Ford Mustang try go for the move? He thinks about it. Tem comes across at the last possible moment. A bit cheeky that. You can see Corr wanted to go for it. Tem's going to defend here. But of course this battling will naturally cause the leaders to gravitate backwards. But here comes Guy Edwards. He's going to pick a side here. Who does he go with? And he's going to look to the inside. Decides not to go win. He wanted to think about the free wide there for 6-7 Motorsport. But in the end, I think a little angel on his right hand shoulder is saying to Guy, just simply wait for it. It will come. They're going to take each other off the road if they keep this up. Well, we'll see if that's going to happen. I think the respect between Corr and Tem is too high to see them take each other off the road. And Edwards right now is just got to bide his time as he makes his way down to that braking zone. It's Corr on the inside, Tem on the outside this time. Nils Corr will potentially have this move done, and well, Tem does back off, goes to the switch back there, but it's too late to the throttle, and the Fury Supersport drive slips back to second. So Nils Corr into lead, but what this has done is for his teammate Idris Abdullahi now within 7 tenths of leaders, and I think that was all part of the strategy. Get the team to fight at the front, and suddenly you bring the second man into the playing situation as they make the way down towards turn number 8, and then you can see Stephen Codman, the AM leader, still following with Dennis Van Beelen and Stuart Reynolds, and Mark Johnson right now versus Chris Jennings, and well, 2.5 seconds back it's there. Now Daniel Oster bringing Rob Sharp, and 2 seconds further behind Ian Anderson, who's got a growing queue of cars behind him, Paul Goffin, Oli Cobardine and Heinz Mayer. We do see there Kim Such and Jill's gone a little bit further back. Jill still raced the course and indeed running 17th for the moment, but enjoyed himself out there. And the professional photographer for real life motorsport and also our official photographer for this series, he's put together some incredible photos. And a huge thank you to Jill's for all his hard work in amongst all his travelling as well. He's literally been travelling up and down the country between rounds. Well, right now we absolutely love to see him out there giving it his all. Even if he may not be on the pace of those at the very front, to be fair, he's still out there to have fun, and that's what it's all about. But as we look back to the front, the sun starts to come out, and Nils Corr still leads, but it's then Stuart Reynolds making a move there on Dennis Van Beelen. Finding its way around the outside at the corner into the chicane, the turns 13A and 13B, and Reynolds gets that move done. Well, now up into 6th place, 5th of the pros, but that means nothing in terms of points. It's all about that overall position right now, and his next target, Stephen Codburn, who is 7 attempts away from him. Given the pace that Reynolds has been setting, theory would be that he's going to be able to catch up quite quickly, as Codburn sets a personal best at 2:15.326, Reynolds at 2:15.295. I think that says everything you need to know, is that we are going to see Reynolds gradually get there if he keeps his composure. What an open few laps this race we've had. Of course, there's been a lot of strategy playing out here, a lot of high speed, high stakes racing, as well as some daring overtakes being made, and I think more's to come as Ollie Carbadine getting ready to attack here versus Paul Goffin for 5th place in the AM class, with Heinz Mayer behind. And how you can tell the difference of the two cars? Well, in Carbadine's case, he's got the yellow wing mirrors and the yellow surround around the front radiator grille. Meanwhile, you've got pink on the wing mirrors and also the front radiator grille for Heinz Mayer's car. That's the difference between the two of them. Indeed, I do love it when a team, or indeed sister teams, they do make some slight differences in the liveries there, where in this case it is the two drivers of the same team, in order to help us understand who's the helm of which car, as we see you 14 of Carbadine coming through turn number 5. But as he makes his way up the rise, well, we take a look back, ladies and gentlemen, to some of the big moments at the start of this race, including when we did go green at flag racing. So this was how we got underway, and as we look to the blimp camera, a bit of a slow start there for the back end of the field. They were caught out by Nils Corr going so early on. He was legally allowed to do so. The safety car had passed, was the pit safety line. But what it meant was the field then made its way down towards turn number 1, where you did have everybody going to a single line very early on. So it actually worked out for everyone in retrospect. Many would say, well, did that cause the field to split? A little bit of the AMs at the back, but otherwise the top 10 all got away in the line, and it was Corr going defensive versus Matias 10 and trying to hold on, but 10 went round the outside here at turn number 3. Had so much more confidence in the car from the start of the race. You don't normally see that. And well, 10 just getting the tyre switched on very early in that Mercedes. Guy Edwards thought about it once, he thought about it twice as he came down here, and once he got ready to think about it thrice, looked one way then the other, to the inside in towards turn number 5, and as much as he wanted to go for it on the brakes, and then realised there's just no way through, but definitely quite a bit of back and forth between them. Meanwhile, we did see some progress being made by Stuart Reynolds, who was on the inside there of Heinz Mayer for position, nice and early on, and that being to take none other than what was 13th place, and then 12th, as he also tucked at the inside there of none other than Paul Goffin, making some very early moves, and Stuart Reynolds really on a charge. But we did, of course, see this from Idris Abdullahi passing Stephen Codburn, and this was on lap number 3, coming down towards turn number 5. Codburn on the outside line there, and well, got it all nicely tucked together, and then briefly disappeared. And when he reappeared, that was the scary part there for Idris Abdullahi, and well, he reappeared at the run into turn number 6. But a lap later, the move was made, and this was down in towards turn number 5 this time. You can see that Codburn was losing the leading trio, and Idris Abdullahi decided to take things into his own hands and make the move happen. I think a decisive move there, and a very valuable one. But then, of course, a lap later, we saw the other satellite racing car have this battle with Matias 10 to retake the lead of the race. Making the way down towards turn number 1, and 10 went one way to the inside. Corr was forced to the outside here, but he said, well, Matias, if you're going to go around the outside of me at the start of the race, I'll go around the outside of you when my tyres are all warmed up. Went around the outside initially at turn number 1 to make them level pegging into turn number 3. Once again, Guy Edwards taking a little bit of poke there to see if he could find the move. Not quite, and as they made the way out of turn number 3, it was then a drag race down towards turn number 5, and we all ended the course with Nils Corr being on the inside. But this replay was really showing you the respect between them, also the fact both drivers absolutely dialed in. But Guy Edwards not going for the cheeky Pete that time, deciding to back off a bit more and lift and coast to save the fuel, and that's where Corr got the move done. But off camera, what we've just had is this happen. Now, Stuart Reynolds has just found his way on the inside there of none other than Dennis Van Beelen, and this was on lap number 5. It was Van Beelen going a bit wide as he made his way up the hill, so he was making some progress, and then we saw him pass Stephen Codman only moments later on lap number 7, and after this we will be going back to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen, and this was Codman being passed into turn 5. Does seem to be the place where all the pros are passing Codman today, and we'll move just like that. And Reynolds in the end not offered much of a defence from Codman, but to be fair for Stephen Codman, his focus is on the AM win. But we now come back to your live racing, and as we do, have any other changes occurred? Well, Ollie Carbadine has found his way ahead of Paul Goffin off camera. We'll try and get a replay of that when we can. He's moved up into 5th place in the AM class. He's now gained 2 places since the start. Otherwise, it has been relatively peaceful. All the drivers really settling into this race. Indeed, this is going to be a test of endurance for our drivers. Now, you're sat there probably thinking, well, all the races are approximately the same length. They're all around 60 minutes as scheduled. So how is this the test of endurance compared to the other rounds? This is a test of mental endurance, particularly concentration levels. Now, you may be sat there thinking, well, given the way the circuit is, why is it about concentration? It's because around here you are running in packs, and when you are in a pack of cars, whether you are the lead car or the rear car or one in the middle, you've got to be constantly aware of whether you can take your race line, alternatively whether you have to lift and coast a little bit and be wary of the concertina effect. Plus, you've got to be keeping an eagle eye on your fuel gauge, plus also keep an eye on that tyre life as well. Where possible, you want to save those aspects of the car because it can save you a lot of time in the pit lane, and that's why the concentration levels here will be pushed to the limit, because you are constantly measuring your race versus the cars around you, and also aware of the fact that every fight, is it worth fighting because it could cost you time. Well, Heinz Mayer definitely thinks it's worth fighting with Paul Goffin here as he looks up the inside towards turn number 6. But in the end, the answer will be no to that, as Goffin does go a bit deep there. Mayer does lull him into a small mistake. We jump aboard here with their own worthy driver and can't quite find a way in at the moment. Having to be a bit patient as we say hello to Mark Matias, and he's cheering on Stuart Reynolds today. Good evening to you, Mark. I hope you're doing well, and I do apologise if I did butcher your surname there. Quickly trying to read it off of the YouTube chat, it always does lead to some change in pronunciations, but either way, if we haven't got it right, we'll try and get it right a little bit later on for you. But as we do see it, Mayer make his way on through. Right now, trying to attack again versus Paul Goffin, this time going in towards the kink. Does he dare go for it? It looks to the inside. This has surely got to be as he hits the limiter there in 4th gear. No, it wasn't going to be moving in. He backed off. That was trying to get Goffin to outrun himself into the corner, and it didn't quite work out. Goffin knew it was never going to happen, and well, he knows that Heinz is too sensible for that, and in the end just simply says, no, you can fake it out as much as you possibly can, but well, as they say, what would be pros don't fake, and well, in the end, Goffin did not fall to the trickery there of Heinz Mayer. But meanwhile, as we do see Nils Corr make his way down the start for the straight, well, since making that pass for the lead on Matias, he has opened up a 9/10 of a second gap. Is this Corr now starting to try and make a break here? If so, is the issue of tyre overheating from the Nürburgring going to hit him again? Remember, he cooked the front tyres at the Nürburgring when he started to make a sizable break, and in the end, that gap came back down after he got it up to 2 seconds. Here right now, 8 temps. I don't think this is a full-on break he's trying to go for. I think he's just trying to give himself a little bit of space and trying to force Tem and Edwards to perhaps play a bit of catch-up. Guy Edwards, meanwhile, will notice that behind him, that no longer is Benijus Abdullahi alone. There's 2 Mercedes behind him, because here is Stuart Reynolds on the run. And Benijus Abdullahi going all the way to the inside down the long stretch. And well, let's go defensive here as they head in towards that braking zone. And onto the anchors they come, and as they do, Reynolds looking around the outside, goes to the switchback here. Is it going to work? The answer is no. As I look out my content booth window, I can hear the sound of a Porsche coming in, and that is Jules Gardner coming in from 17th place. So he's coming early. He's not had anyone to fuel save off of, to be fair, so I suspect his fuel tank has run empty a little bit earlier than most, as he's not had a partner out there, and instead now he's really got to think about siphoning the fuel for the remaining stints. We'll come to strategy shortly. Reynolds looking again here, around the outside to inside on the cutback. Is it going to work? Almost. Just a bit of power oversteer there as he comes off the corner. Reynolds right now, very light car at this point. He wants to make this move before he pits. That's the body language he's sending out. As we see just up the line, he go a little bit deep there, but in the end does get away with that error, and now onwards they'll go towards the kink. But coming in towards turn number 11. And Reynolds here just backs off and lifts off the throttle deep, but he heard him just derate the car slightly. And now making his way up towards turn number 12. And as he does so, well, is he going to look for a move here from this far back? 2 attempts back. I doubt it. In fact, just simply lifts and coasts again there, about 50 meters from his braking zone and saving the fuel. Only going for the move when he knows he can absolutely do so. Of course, he does have a little bit of a pace advantage, we believe, plus the slipstreams. That gives him options. And Reynolds right now exercising options rather cautiously. Stephen Quadman there still. And then we see Dennis Van Beelen ahead of Mark Johnson. And then you've got a little bit further back to go for Chris Jennings, who in turn has Daniel Osler and Rob Sharp further behind. There's Osler, Sharp still with him. And Sharp right now trying to make some magic work. Stuart Reynolds is into the pits as number 1 comes down pit road. And well, that's an early pit stop. But to be fair, I suspect he's used a lot more fuel to get himself up the order. And therefore he's on a bit of an offset strategy. More cars pulling into the pit lane. Ollie Carbadine comes in. Who comes in behind him? That's Kim Such as well. So they're all deciding right now whether to come in on lap number 9 or whether it's on lap number 10. Those are now to fuel saver trying to go another lap. And well, I think we are going to be sticking to our standard, a pit stop every approximately 20 to 25 minutes, as we do typically see in these 60-minute races for the fuel tanks we have. 2 stops expected here today. But right now, where you can, you want to extend these stints where possible. So you want to give yourself the lightest possible car for as long as possible in order to get the best possible lap times out there. As Heinz Mayer and Paul Goffin still fighting, and well, Paul Goffin doing a brilliant job of keeping Mayer pitched behind him. Now, the update on the AM Championship as it currently stands, and well, there is Rob Sharp making his way behind Daniel Osler. Now, things were to finish as they currently stand. As the drivers come through, with Codman taking that pole position, and not quite so, of course, for Rob Sharp. And in terms of their finishing positions at the moment, if Sharp was to finish third, and meanwhile Codman was taking the win, it would be 152 points to Stephen Codman and 150 to Rob Sharp. And therefore, we would see Stephen Codman take that crown by 2 points. That's how tight it is currently. So that's a quick update there. And well, the drivers carrying through. We'll keep you surmised on that a little bit later on. Of course, we don't want to obsess over it because there's all other drivers out there as well. And everyone has got a story here today. And well, Nils Corr right now wanting that win that has escaped him all season long. And in doing so, well, with Matias Penttilä absent here, he would be taking home second place in the championship. But whilst Penttilä's absent, and therefore that does make it a little bit of a hollow moment in that championship battle, he's going to try and fill in the hollow hole by making sure he finally gets that win. And remembering the fact, of course, there's been 5 wins to Stuart Reynolds this season, 1 to Dan Perry in the wet at VIR, and 1 to Matias Penttilä in that brilliant showdown midway through the season between the two of them out Panorama. But right now, Nils Corr, he definitely, when we spoke to him after the race at Nürburgring, he was gutted. He was distraught at not taking the win. He wanted it on home soil at the Nürburgring, and here he's coming out firing on all cylinders. He tucks into the pits, they all do. I wouldn't be surprised if Dennis Van Beelen comes on in with the next pack of cars, with Mark Johnson and Chris Jennings behind. Can anybody go and length tour the circuit? I do not think so. So this is now a battle on the fuel guns as everyone comes in. And remembering the fact that Stuart Reynolds is the first of the drivers out there who has taken his maiden pit stop, so therefore we're waiting to see where he fits into the strategic picture. Now, the pit lane here at Road America, a very long pit lane. We show you the blimp view, and we'll keep in mind that you do see fields of up to 40, if not 50 cars race here in the IMSA Sports Car Championship on an annual basis amongst other national and club series. So, therefore, this is a pit lane whereby they travel all the way to the end, and they will spend the best part of a minute end-to-end in the pits, and it will be a stationary stop of somewhere in the region, most likely of 20 seconds. Fuel will be going into these cars. We also do see cars up on the jacks as well. That'll be most likely for 2 tyres to be changed, as meanwhile, cars starting to come down off the jacks there. Tyres have been changed, and now it's go, go, go. But who comes out first? It's going to be Nils Corr. Where is Stuart Reynolds? On the right of your picture. Here comes the fast-moving Stuart Reynolds. In fact, he's going to come right on the back of this group. Reynolds has really made this undercut strategy work. Now, remember, of course, he's not been able to fuel save as much, so he may be due a much longer pit stop towards the end of the race for his second stop, but Reynolds is right there. As meanwhile, off the road has gone Benny Just Abdullahi, and he was ahead of Stephen Codman, but Codman takes the place off him, coming out turn 1 into 2 and 3. But Stuart Reynolds right now, Reynolds could seriously win this race. He is absolutely flying. And remember, his tyres warm back up for this lap compared to his rolls around him. We've got to get their tyre temperature back. So if so, Reynolds may be going all in for this. He may be able to still weigh a couple more places. And if he does so, well, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be definitely a story of the season here. And it goes to show you that even when he's got the championship wrapped up, he's not done. He really is hungry right now. And will they say, what do rich people want? More money. Well, what do championship winners want? They want more wins. And as they make the way on through in towards turn 6 and 7, right now, I think for Stuart Reynolds, this is going to be going from as a rags to riches start in terms of starting at the back of the field to what could be the win, or at least a chance for a podium here. Meanwhile, Heinz Mayer up the inside there, Kim Such taking over 7th place there in the AM class. A switch of places there, 3 attempts, and Mayer right now moving forward. As he does so, well, Kim Such now falls back into the order. And it's going through the Brownworthy car ahead of the Oris digital car. You can tell by the logos on the side and also the coloration scheme towards the back of the car, whereby whilst they both share the white into silver start, it is a light blue to turquoise grading on the rear of the Brownworthy car. Meanwhile, of course, on the Oris racing machine, it is none other than grey to black. But we can't talk too much about that. As look here, here's your leaders, and that's Reynolds on the inside of Guy Edwards into Canada corner. Third place there for Stuart Reynolds now, and well, that is the tyre advantage he has as a result of pitting one lap earlier here. Of course, that will swing back against him later on, but right now Stuart Reynolds is absolutely seizing initiative here. Next up is his teammate Matias. That's going to be a tricky one because Tem, of course, will want Reynolds to do work for him here today to help him seal what could be the highest possible position in the overall Drivers' Championship. Reynolds, of course, will be keen to move forward. Try and make it 1-2 for the team if he can. They've got just one problem in front of them, and that is Nils Corr, who right now will definitely not be keen to let that win go. Here they come down towards turn number 1 on lap 12, and as they do, we're almost at the halfway point of this race. 34 minutes in the final lap still to go, and goodness me, have there been some big moments so far, but now all your leaders have got their tyres up to temperature, and at this point everything evens out a little bit, although Reynolds, of course, with a car that has already pitted one lap earlier than them, he is thought that he's going to have a slightly lighter car sooner. He will have to pit sooner as a result. As he makes his way up towards turn 5, as they all do. Well, Stephen Codman right now, your AM leader, in a little bit of a lonely AM lead at this point. 5 seconds off the leaders, 1.7 seconds ahead of Benny Abdullah. He's trying to get onto the back of him. And Dennis Van Been and Mark Johnson still trying to catch back up. Now, for Stephen Codman at this point, what exactly do you do? Well, I don't think you can turn the wick down here. If you're Track Mouse Racing, you have to keep pushing because there's Chris Jennings in 9th, Daniel Osler behind, and then Rob Sharp. He's doing exceptionally well here, staying with Daniel Osler. He has found the right car to follow, and that's the game plan. He is hoping that they can clear Chris Jennings gradually, and in doing so, then get onto the back of Van Been and Idris Abdullahi, and then, well, of course, make the way through. Well, in fact, first get past Mark Johnson, I should say, then to Van Been and Idris Abdullahi, and then Stephen Codman. That is what Rob Sharp is absolutely basing this race on right now, and this is a very tough mental stint for the Aburis racing driver, because right now his race is at the mercy of the pack in front of him. He hasn't got the straight line speed to close up to these cars naturally. He has to do it in the draft, and he's got to stay with them. So for him, his consistency is going to be put for the ringer, but if he can be consistent and mirror Daniel Osler, well, he will have a good chance here of trying to steal second place back in the AM class. And if he does that, the crown would swing to him. That's the target. Beat Mark Johnson, and you can bet the Mark Johnson at Track Mouse Racing Aston Martin, should we see Rob Sharp get close to him, Mark Johnson's going to become the widest Aston Martin that Road America has seen in the best part of what is its 71-year history. But as we see him make his way up the hill, the number 88 driver here right now, still glued to the back of Dennis Van Beelen, and probably hoping the Chicane Online Racing driver or the COR car can pull him away from those trying to catch him. But as our drivers make their way onto the next lap, we take a quick look back in time, and in particular, we take a look back to what happened to Benny Abdullahi. Now, this was they left the pit lane, of course, and Idris Abdullahi went deep into the opening corner. The camera just turns around there, missed his braking marker, and, well, that's the reason why we saw Stephen Codman get ahead of him. And, well, a small mistake there from Idris Abdullahi, almost if he was napping at the wheel there, not quite literally, but that mistake there, a very uncommon one for a driver to make. We also did have, of course, what was this between Kim Such and Heinz Mayer, with the two of them side by side as they made the way down towards turn number 1. And it was Kim Such who had already pitted, Heinz Mayer who was coming out of the pit lane. They swapped the places there, and then by the time they got to turn number 5, where it was Heinz Mayer who came back, went down the hill in towards the braking zone, and at this point, where it was going to be Mayer looking to the inside, saw the space there, and well, came from quite far back, but his teammate saw it was coming, or his sister team driver saw it was coming, we should say, and in the end, Heinz Mayer making his way on through. But with that, we also did see Stuart Reynolds pull off of this pass on Guy Edwards, and this was on lap number 11, coming in towards Canada Bend, and we'll look to the inside here, and Edwards did not offer a defence, not wanting to lose the leading pair, and in the end, Stuart Reynolds definitely making sure it was a smooth and succinct move, and that's exactly what they both needed. But we do come back to live racing, and as we do, well, Nils Corr making his way on through with what is now half the race awaiting him come the end of this lap. We're very likely to see 25 to 26 laps here today, and what the race has been so far. But Corr is the staple at the front of the field. He's the man who started on pole, and right now he does not want to let it go. But there's Tim and Reynolds now, the two Fury Sport teammates. They can try to double team Nils Corr. How could they do it, I hear you ask? Well, here's the strategy part. Now, understandably, this is a race where fuel saving can prove very valuable. But for Nils Corr, can he actually save any fuel beyond lift and coast? Not really. He has nobody to draft off of. Now, Tim and Reynolds, they may decide, right, we just sit behind the leader and make sure that we do not pressure him into a move, and instead we save all the fuel and tyre life and we beat him in the pit stop, because they can save a couple of litres of fuel. Well, suddenly they may find themselves in a pit stop that's about 2 or 3 seconds shorter, and they will jump ahead. And in the final throes of the race, that final stint, it'll be Nils Corr who has to try and find his way past. But then with all the cars fueled up, you would imagine and that you would see both Tim and Reynolds make the cars wide enough to lead home that 1-2 in the case of Fury Simsport without Nils Corr being able to make his way past. That's the theory. The other thought process is they make an overtake where they can on Corr, and they split their strategies, where one car goes at the front of the field and one goes a bit further behind to give themselves strategic options. As Guy Edwards is slowly slipping off this group right now. And I think Edwards here, since being passed, I think he's not too happy with the way the car's behaving at the moment. He's got to get himself back in the rhythm. As Reynolds definitely bump drafting along Tim as they make their way down towards turn number 5. It's a small tap on the rear bumper, entirely legal, of course, a tactic you normally see in what would be oval racing disciplines such as NASCAR. And that's where the idea, the car behind taps the car in front on the rear bumper and just imparts a little bit of speed as a result of the slipstream effect into the car in front, and that's why they called it a bump draft. You are drafting the car in front and you bump their rear bumper with your front bumper to help them gain a bit more speed, and well, that speed could be very valuable on a long straightaway. Now, as they make the way in towards turn number 8, one thing I've always been curious about, and perhaps some of you know tuning in today, straightaway. It's a term used in the United States of America to refer to what we would refer here in the United Kingdom as a straight on a circuit or a lined piece of tarmac. Where exactly does the term straightaway come from in the US of A? If you do know the answer, feel free to share, or you might have to do some research before our next season race at Sim Racing Magazine and give you an answer to that when we do come back after what is our summer season break. But as the drivers make the way onwards, well, we do look to Daniel Osler. And also did pick up a bit of a slowdown penalty out one of the corners earlier on, but it's not costing too much time. What is noticeable, however, is that Chris Jennings is very slowly losing time to Mark Johnson. I say slowly, that last lap, he lost a 1/10 and a half, and his average has been 1/10 lap he's losing to Johnson. And Daniel Osler's not close enough, really, to be able to put some pressure on Jennings to make a move. Not that he would, because I can imagine that Ford Mustang would very quickly come back past, or at least go for what would be the counter-attack. So right now for Rob Sharp, this is hanging the balance a little bit in the 68 car. He's just got to commit to the strategy here and not lose faith. Of course, should Mark Johnson make a mistake, not saying he would, he has had a lot of bad luck this season, and that spectre is hanging over him. Should he make an error, he could suddenly fall back into that group. But his fault is to stay with Van Beelen as much as possible, and he's doing exactly that right now. Johnson is being the best number 2 he possibly can to Stephen Codman here by just simply making sure that Jennings, Oster and Sharp in particular cannot get into the draft zone that easily. And that's what Johnson's got to do all the way to the end. He's got a fuel save as well where he can, in order to see if he can open up that gap between the packs after the second pit stop, which is around about 10 minutes away at this point, we believe. As we come to Ollie Carbadine, he's attacking Ian Anderson. So going back onto the attack versus the See You Next Tuesday Aston Martin. Of course, the car based around the Nürburgring racing team that raced in British GT in the 2010s, the late 2010s, with that Aston Martin V8 Vantage at the time, not the Evo, that arriving in 2022, I want to say. In fact, I think 2023. Indeed, it was the Aston Martin V8 Vantage there, which symbolised the return of Aston Martin to GT3 racing after their GT1 car of the DBR9, the V12 6-litre, giving way to the V8 power plant. But as we do see our drivers making the way on down here, Ollie Carbadine, Sin, Anderson getting a bit defensive there on him. And right now, definitely Anderson feeding the heat. Daniel Osler has found his way past Chris Jennings, so Osler now have made that move, but the gap to Johnson is 2.3 seconds, so Osler's now got the problem we talked about any moments ago, which is, yes, he's made the pass, now he's got to close the gap to Johnson. In the corners here in the middle sector, that will be straightforward, but it's the rest of the lap, the first and the final sector, if you break it down into 3 parts, where it's not going to be anywhere near easy, because they're more focused on the power. But how do you get that move done? Well, here's a quick replay to explain. Now, this was only moments ago. It was in the run down towards turn number 5, and there, Oster had an incredible run out of turn number 3, glued to the back of that Ford Mustang. At this point, he decided, right, I'm going to go for it, threw the car to the inside there, and we've got the move done. Just about kept him in track limits there, although to go to the very edge of the limit in order to make sure that Chris Jennings could not find a way back through. Lovely move there from Daniel Osler, showing his prowess there as a pro driver. But as we do come back to the front, on towards lap number 16, Corr, 10, Reynolds, that's your top 3. Edwards, 1.5 seconds behind. Fourth place driver just behind him right now. He is just staying within touch there, but it is a very tenuous touch with regards to the distance he sits behind them. And well, should that gap open up much more, I think we will be saying goodbye to Guy Edwards in terms of being in the leading group, and he would need to pull off a bit of a miracle and strategy if he wants to get back there, or he'd need to see this leading group fight. Not impossible, to be fair. You never know what can happen until the very end of the race. But meanwhile, Stephen Codman still running in 5th. AM leader, doing everything right now to see the AM crown slide his way. And well, as he makes his way through turn number 3, he is currently 25 minutes away. Should things stay as they are, he is 25 minutes away from provisionally becoming a Season 8 AM champion. But we're not going to put the commentator's curse on it. We are going to hold the fort on it there. Ben Idris Abdullahi and Dennis Van Beelen continue to chase him and bring Mark Johnson along with him. And Johnson, the second of the AM drivers, doing exactly what he needs to do at this point, which is just make sure Rob Sharp cannot get close enough to try and steal that second away. But as they come into the middle sector again, Sharp makes one around. We ride on board the front bumper here of the Scottish Burris Racing 68. Well, through that left hand of turn number 6, you can see that Daniel Osler right now pushing it to the limit, but he doesn't look 100% happy the way the car's handling at the moment, Osler. I wonder where he's had to push the tyres so hard to make that move happen on Chris James in the end. He's actually cut the tyres a little bit and is now struggling. Alternatively, is Osler having to adjust himself, of course, to the fact he's spent so long following another car and getting used to the dirty air line and the slipstream line and the differences in speed. Osler right now has realised and actually push the corners, but how hard do you push them again? He's essentially having to relearn muscle memory as he goes on around. Meanwhile, the Fury Sport trying now 3 seconds behind Johnson. Johnson aided by the slipstream of Van Beelen. Let's not forget that. But also definitely does need to find some headway in that middle sector, because that middle sector where he should have gained, he's actually just lost 2 tenths through there. Meanwhile, we look back to Ollie Carbadine. And well, he's still chasing Ian Anderson here, looking for an opportunity to steal this 4th place away in the AM class and 12th overall. If you excuse me now as I take a quick sip of water as our drivers make the way in towards Canada Bend at the moment. That gap opens up a little bit. Naturally, of course, the gap will ebb and flow. That's the Constantine effect in full demonstration. They close up a lot more than they seem under braking because they spread out on the longer straights. We see acceleration take over. We do know in the battle of these two cars, both powered, we believe, by a Mercedes engine, both a V8 engine, albeit 6.3 litres in the case of the Mercedes AMG we're right on board with. I think it's a shorter capacity engine in the case of the Aston Martin's power plant. But either way, these two right now both getting the power down as they make their way across that timing line. But to the front of them is Daniel Osler and Chris Jennings. Osler find that Jennings is getting exceptionally close in towards turn number 1, and at the very front of the field, there's your top 3. Gap to Guy Edwards is now 2.5 seconds. Edwards is out of this now, but here comes Tim looking for the move on Nils Corr, looking up the inside immediately. And well, Tim goes all in here, opens up the door, and Reynolds now, he's going to try and cover as well. And Tim in the end, essentially pushing the door open with both feet, you could say. And now can Reynolds get himself through the door as well? Well, Nils Corr's going to defend it to the inside. He's not too happy about this. He sees what's going on, and he feels though there he's been slightly elbowed out of the way. And Reynolds in the end is run to the edge of the road there, fairly by Nils Corr, but right now Nils sees the game plan that Fury Sport are deploying, and he says, I don't like this one bit, thank you very much. I'm going to make sure I'm not losing more than 1 place here. And well, Tim, absolutely fine with what he did there, to be fair, that little run. They were able to keep within track limits, and immediately there, Tim goes a bit deep for the carousel, so it hasn't worked out. And well, now we can see that Corr takes the lead there, but it was a bit of a daring gambit from Matias, Tim, and we see a flash of the headlights there from Tim. I think flashing back to saying, okay, Nils, I put my hand up, I was cheeky about that one, I'll give you the place back. And we can see what they wanted to do at the Fury Sport team. They decided to go for it, and well, I understand Nils not too impressed, but right now they've addressed the positions there. Not they necessarily needed to, but at the same time, that's what the game and the story's all about here. They're being respectful, and I think right now they're enjoying this fight, and Fury Sport getting ready to come back once again. But as they do, Guy Edwards now back within 9 tenths, and Sonny all in amongst all that. What's 2.5 seconds comes down to sub 1 second, and Guy Edwards probably thinking to himself right now what exactly has been going on. And well, he'll surely know, he'll be told over the radio by the team that essentially the top 3 have had a little bit of a discussion at high speed. They did exchanging words via with high-speed Morse code on those headlights. And now Guy Edwards has another chance here to potentially get back onto that podium. If not, take his first and what will be only win of the season. as they go on to lap number 18. 20 minutes still to go, and we've still got that extra pit stop remaining. Let's see who exactly is going to take it when. Stuart Reynolds surely will be the first out of this quartet to take it, unless he finds a way to do a huge amount of fuel saving. Given the fact he had to pit on lap number 9, where everyone else in front of him and around him pitted on lap number 10. That was because he used more fuel to carve his way through the field. He did not waste any time. And well, right now, if he is able to extend the fuel tank to go essentially 2 laps longer compared to what the prediction would be, which would then put him on the same strategy as those around him, that would be incredible. But I wonder whether Matias will come into the pits when Reynolds does, and the reason for that is they may be thinking by pitting the 2 cars together they can actually gain some time. The only problem they'll have is that Tem does have more fuel in the tank right now, given the fact that of course he pitted a lap later. So how do they offset that? They probably can't. They'd be at risk actually of sacrificing some of Matias' time to help Reynolds out in such a situation. So if they do combine the strategies together, I think actually the reality would be that the Fury Supersport would lose more time than they gain. They put themselves at risk at least of losing positions. Meanwhile, into the pit lane out my quad super window, Jules Gardner comes on down. This will be for his second and final stop in a very lonely race for him, and therefore 9 laps is the most he can go on the opening stint. And right now he goes a further 9 laps on this stint as he does park up here and puts the car up on the jacks to change a couple of tyres and get some fuel back in the car. Indeed, a very thirsty circuit this one, and also quite heavy on tyre wear given the amount of load that goes on to the left-hand side tyres. This is a clockwise circuit, some more right-handers than left-handers, and particularly turns 1, 3, and also 12 here, and the kink at 11 will really hurt the left-hand side tyres. That front left will take a beat in the front engine rear drive cars, the amount of weight that's pushed onto it, and when the mid-engine rear drive and the, well, it is mid-engine rear drive only cars out there, we have no rear-engine rear drive drivetrains, the Porsche being mid-engine rear drive in the GT4 Cayman. You might understand it's the rear left tyre that will do all the hard work. But onwards they go. Does anybody pin into the pits out of this group? No. So Reynolds does get another lap in now on his stint. You would expect that because he has been in this group. He has been able to fuel save. As they head on down, well, Jules Gardner leaves the pit lane. On the right hand side, you can see there, growing bigger and bigger in the rear of the picture. Well, it's going to be the leader. So Gardner is going to be at risk of having to respect some blue flags shortly. Although to be fair, he'll definitely know they're coming and he'll be aware of them when the time comes. Meanwhile, Ollie Carbadine, as Paul Goffin still pushing the on here, and well, Goffin's still trying to find a way past. Not proving easy at the moment, having to really bide and wait his time out as we do still make the way onto the next tour of the circuit. But can Goffin find a way in at the moment? I don't think so on this straight. And again, here you can see, look out that gap. It was 3/10 they exited turn number 14. It stays exactly at 3/10. Although closing right towards the end of what is 6th gear and the run down towards turn 1, and that is because the Mercedes is having so much more straight line speed compared to the Porsche. That final gear of the Porsche being a very tall gear as well, which does not help it. And as they come through in towards turn number 3 right now, Paul Goffin knowing that this is a race where he's going to have to be really patient and somehow get a really good exit out of the corner and then go to pounce for the move. Into the pits, Kim Such, he's made his way on in, so therefore another driver in. We've still got quite a bit of time left here before we do see the next pit stop, or do we? Will we see a load of drivers coming in at the end of this lap? We'll see. As Goff in the end thinks about it, he's now thinking about keying up a move here, but he's going to need to just be that little bit closer. Ian Anderson, meanwhile, well, he sits in full for the AM class, Roddy Carbadine there, and Anderson right now. And he's nowhere near sharp at the moment, and instead he's going to just see if he can hold on to this fourth place. But as the Aston Martin driver has broken away from Carbadine and Goffin for the time being, so he's looking quite safe at least in the 4.55. We'll have to wait and see what the next part of his story will be here. Nils Corr, meanwhile, there he is, as we do see Jules Gardner coming back across, but he does find Guy Edwards is still there, so he does manage as best he can, and will no foul play there as he goes a lap down to the leaders. Right now, that's definitely a little bit of space there for Nils Corr, who now finds he's got 7/10 of a second to Tem and Reynolds, but as he comes out of this corner, does he come into the pit lane here, or does he go a 20th lap before he comes in for his final stop of the day? The answer, he stays out. Matias does so as well, and Stuart Reynolds in has to come in. The fuel tank cannot go further. We expected that was going to happen, and now, well, there is the proof in the pudding. Reynolds has to come in. Now he will try to undercut, but he does have to take more fuel in his pit stop compared to the leaders here going one more lap. It's natural consequence, of course, of the fact you pit earlier, you go on to that final stint, he will need to take an extra lap's worth of fuel, unless he gambles on taking half a lap of fuel and making up the other half by fuel saving in amongst this group. It depends on what he wants to go for. Does he go for a monster out lap and try to attack as much as possible, or does he decide to try and see if he can strategize his way through the field? But, well, that's up to him, and we'll find that story very shortly. Van Beelen's also in as the chicane online racing drive comes to a halt, and Reynolds leaves the pit lane. 17.37 seconds to stop there. I think Reynolds has gone for a half fuel lap rather than taking the full fuel needed. I wonder how much that's going to gain him here. Does it put him to the front of that field? I think that's the target. Essentially, get this good outlap in, and if he can move himself to the front, and then he can control the pace, so he can do a load of fuel saving in order to try and get the fuel he needs to get to the end. But I think Reynolds has intentionally just slightly underfueled by around a third to half a lap in order to be able to see if he can leap ahead. And it's a smart move if so. Dennis Van Beelen as well doing a huge amount of fuel saving. Only a 14.7 second stop there. Well, I might be wrong on my fuel predictions, but Van Beelen definitely having the shortest stop we've seen all day so far. Ian Anderson and Ollie Carwadine make the way out the pit lane shortly. Anderson's going to be well clear of Carwadine at this time. So therefore all taking that final stop. Carwadine there you can see from rear picture to now main focus of picture, and well, he will be ahead of Kim Such, who's just left the pit, well, has pitted previously. Here he is making his way down the start for the straight, and Jules Gardner a little bit further back, who has taken his second and final stop. But as Nils Corr makes his way in towards Canada corner, well, this is going to be the final lap surely then for his stint. Well, Matias still with him, but Guy Edwards now 1.7 seconds back again. So McLaren drive gets close, but he needs them to fight. That seems to be the challenge he's got. If they don't fight in front of him, he does naturally lose out by a couple of attempts a lap. That seems to be his pace deficit here today. But into the pits come our leaders, and Edwards in the end also tucks in. Now, I thought he was going to go another lap. I was going to say that is a real telltale sign of what he's been doing. No, he does come in, he hits the limiter line as best he possibly can, and they're all on down pit road. But of course, as they make the way onwards, well, it's going to be to the end of the pit lane as we look to the blimp camera. Through goes Jules Garner to retake time, but we've got a black flag, and that's a Guy Edwards. That is for speeding on pit entry, and that is going to be, I believe, a drive-through penalty that comes his way. So therefore, for Guy Edwards, when he leaves the pits, he'll be coming back in with the next 3 laps to do a drive-through, and that is going to cost him the best part of 40 seconds. That is Guy Edwards' race absolutely out of the equation for a podium. There is no coming back from that. But as they all sit there waiting patiently for the fuel guns to come out the car, meanwhile, Stuart Reynolds comes down the start for this straight here, and how close is this going to be? As he makes his way onwards, well, Nils Corr leaving the pits already. 13.7 seconds to stop. So, in fact, I think Stuart Reynolds taking all the fuel he needs to get to the end. And then you see Tem comes out, then there's Stuart Reynolds, and in the end, Nils Corr. Well, it's interesting because Corr 13.7 seconds, Matias Tem 15.2, Reynolds 17.3. It's Corr who's gone for an incredibly short stop, and well, if he's been doing fuel saving whilst leading the race, that is absolutely incredible. But meanwhile, Guy Edwards is being held in his pit box. I mean, it is a stop and hold 40-second penalty for Guy Edwards. It is not a drive-through penalty. So Edwards stops, he's being held, and then the car can be worked on. So the good news is he doesn't have to make 2 visits to the pit lane. The bad news is, unfortunately, he will still drop down the order. Stuart Reynolds and Matias Tem side by side here, and well, for a brief moment, and Tem lets the place go to Reynolds, and I think saying to his teammate, okay, if you can think you can catch the leader, go for it, Stuart. And we'll have to wait and see whether these two now can bring down the gap to Nils Corr, who's got to try and hold on for 12.5 more minutes and the final lap. But with all that, Rob Sharp, here he is glued to the back of Chris Jennings. Daniel Osler has got clear of the pair of them to 3 seconds. And right now, well, for Sharp, he had to take the longest stop out of the group there. He had to take on a lot more fuel, it would seem. And to show you the pit time that our drivers have had to take, there it is on the screen. Of course, keeping on that Guy Edwards, that 56.3 seconds, 40 seconds. That is the stop and hold 40-second penalty he's picked up. Guys, that explains all the stories there with regards to those pit stops. And Rob Sharp, 16.7 seconds. To Osler's 14.8 and Jensen's 15.3. He's lost out there as Sharp and now finds himself consumed by a battle for 9th place rather than being able to catch up to Mark Johnson, who Daniel Osler is slowly getting closer to. The gap between Osler and Johnson is now 1.2 seconds. That is where Sharp wants to be, not here. But of course, what you want and what you have are two different things, and right now he's got to try and take what he's got and convert it into what he wants later on, but that will be a tough test. That's Guy Edwards here, now tries to pick his way back through. Well, the first thing he's got to do is fight his way past Ian Anderson. Looking around the outside here through the carousel. As he does so, on the outside there, that's brave, it's bold. Is it going to be brilliant? Well, he's going to go for the switchback here to try and show his brilliance, but Ian Anderson puts the car in the middle of the road, covers off Edwards here. Edwards going to go to the inside, and in the end realises there's no way you're going too wide through there, and Anderson right now definitely being a bit of a nuisance in the ride of Guy Edwards, but to be fair, fighting for overall position, Anderson wants every point. Indeed, end of the season here, I think Anderson also would like the buffer to Goffin and Mayer if he can help it with the pro drivers. But behind, there we see, that's Paul Goffin up the inside of Heinz Mayer go for the move. So in the end, Paul Goffin does find that overtake, and he finds it right at the end of a long straight into Canada Corner. So not the best of runs through the kink there, surely, for Heinz Mayer. But Goffin gets ahead, but now can he hold on to it? Because what's coming up next, of course, is the longest stretch of tarmac on this circuit. It's the start for this straight. And whoa, goodness me! Anderson and Edwards both go round and both to the barrier there. And there's another car round. There's Heinz Mayer round as well. Well, surely there's no fluids down there at the final corner. That's not modelled on iRacing, but you'd think that oil had gone down there at the final corner. And all three of them have gone round right now. Edwards had to tow to the pit lane. I think the other two are going to try and crawl to the pit lane where they can, but both cars heavily damaged. And Ian Anderson right now trying to get himself up to speed. In fact, he's going to carry on Sand's front bumper. Meanwhile, Heinz Mayer comes in to use his fast repair, but goodness me, what a twist in the tail there. And well, that goes to show you it's not over till it's over, ladies and gentlemen, and things can happen at very short notice. But as Ian Anderson carries on, well, let's take a look back at what exactly happened. Well, this was firstly for Heinz Mayer as he made his way through the corner. The incident in front had already occurred, and well, Mayer came on through, and as he did so, well, just dips the rear left tyre wide there off of the exit curb and onto the gravel. Tried to get the power down with the steering lock still out of position when in the rear of the car completely let go. This was for Guy Edwards and Ian Anderson as they made the way through. Slightly different camera angle here, picked them up. And as they made the way through that final corner, Anderson went deep. He'd lost the rear and Guy Edwards had no time to react there. Now, if you're sat there thinking, well, surely you must have. Well, the problem is this is what it looks like on board from Guy Edwards' car. And remember, they're now into a corner. Edwards has loaded up the front of the car at this point. He is now a passenger in that car. He cannot do anything else here. He tries to feather it off to the inside, but Anderson's always going to turn there. And for Edwards, once he committed to the corner, Anderson was gone. Anderson just lost it there and unfortunately took with him what was Guy Edwards. But an innocent mistake, to be fair. As much as Guy Edwards will be fuming when he gets out the car, when they look back at it afterwards, I think both drivers are going to go, you know what, it's one of those things, it's unfortunate, it happens, but in the heat of the moment, of course, you don't always see things that way. But still, Nils Corr makes his way around, and as he does so, coming back to your live picture in the leader of the field, well, right now, 3 seconds is the gap for Corr, and well, he is literally walking on eggshells here. If he can manage this with the amount of fuel he's put in and bring home this win and maintain that gap to Reynolds and Tem, I'll tell you one thing, this will be his only win of the season, but this will be up there as well, the best wins we've seen delivered by a driver at Sim Racing Magazine. And for Nils Corr, I think this is going to be worth more than any win he could have taken at the Nürburgring a month ago. But we'll have to see if he can hold on for a little bit longer. 8 minutes to go. After this lap, likely another 4 laps, and therefore we're probably going to go the distance of what will be a grand total of 27 laps, perhaps 26. My maths isn't perfect. In fact, I think it is going to lean more towards 26 laps the more I think about it, but either way, Nils Corr just needs to hold on for a little bit longer. An update in the battle for the AM Championship crown, as we do see there, Stephen Codman chasing after Ben Idris Abdullahi. Well, keep in mind right now, there is still the same positions as they were when we last talked about this. Rob Sharp in 3rd in the AM class, Stephen Codman in the lead, and well, with the pole position coming the way as well. And for Stephen Codman, what it would mean is that should things finish as they currently stand, Stephen Codman would take 26 points from this round, and that would give him a final championship score of 152 points to the 150 that Rob Sharp would emerge from Road America with. Stephen Codman would be your provisional AM champion for Season 8 by 2 points. It's that close as they make the way onwards, and right now, all Codman needs to do is maintain his rhythm, and it's down to Mark Johnson here to make sure that Sharp, should he get any closer, does not find that 2nd place. But the track house race there looking for a 1-2 as well. The perfect end to the season. And for Mark Johnson, this would be the result that would see him finish third in the AM Championship, given the pressure that he's on coming into this round, being only 2 points separated, third, fourth and fifth. And right now, Johnson definitely making sure he does not want to fall into the clutches of Ollie Caldine and Paul Goffin in this season-long rivalry. Of course, a season which has been marred with mistakes and marred with bad luck. And right now, Johnson craning his own luck here today. But back up to the front we go, and Stuart Reynolds and Matias Tim together. A 2:15.2 for Reynolds, a 2:15.0 for Tim. For Corr, a 2:15.5. That gap is being chiselled down little by little, but it is by very slender margins right now, and that's the thing with the time remaining. Presuming that Corr does not have to do any extra fuel saving at this point, 2 temps would not be enough. They would need to be started to carve down about 6 temps a lap to give themselves the opportunity on the final lap. That is going to be the tough part of the story as they make the way up towards turn number 5, in the fact that right now Corr may have got this right on balance and strategy. Idris Abdullahi in fourth, nowhere near the leaders at the moment, but the satellite racing team will be very happy with the way things are proceeding as they make their way down into that braking zone. You can see there right now the 269 driver going to try and bring home that 4th place. And with that result, well, what would it mean for his position in the overall championship? Well, it would mean he'd still finish behind Matias Tim, and indeed he would still finish in what would be, I believe, 5th place in the championship. And well, we would see Matias Tim take 4th, Nils Corr would take 2nd, and Matias Penttilä would be 3rd, given his absence here today. That's some provisional mathematics in my head. Don't quote me on it, to be fair, ladies and gents, because we don't always know. We have sadly lost Guy Edwards from this race due to the incident with Ian Anderson. The car is not coming back out as we understand it due to damage inflicted. A bit unfortunate there for Guy Edwards, but understandable given the severity of the incident to the barrier. And well, unfortunately for him, ended his season on a bit of a frustrating low, as it's all looking to be quite a high towards the end of the season. There's Dennis Van Beelen, the chicane online race drive, running 6th at the moment. He has dropped Mark Johnson over the last couple of laps, and in fact 5 temps was the last lap advantage he had, a 2:16.1 to a 2:16.6 for Johnson. So right now Van Beelen is turning up the pace right at the end, as we have had a further trip to the pit lane for Heinz Mayer for a quick splash and dash, or is it? No, in fact it's for damage to the car. My apologies there, that's to the incident he had earlier on. How could we forget that? So Heinz Mayer has made his way in for a 3rd time. Hopefully we won't see anybody here coming in for what would be a 3rd pit stop, because then you know they've got it wrong if it's not because of an incident to get the car repaired. Well, nobody wants to have to essentially do the splash and dash of shame at this point, just simply because of how long that pit lane is. That would completely destroy what you've been able to achieve over the race distance. But Mark Johnson right now, 3 seconds behind Van Beelen, a 2nd ahead of Daniel Osler, who is pushing hard to chase it down. Chris Jennings is back with Osler, intriguingly. Meanwhile, Rob Sharp has actually fallen away from them a little bit. So, Sharp right now at the mercy, really, of seeing Osler and Jennings fight and potentially bringing Johnson into the equation. We're on lap 25. Our leaders are already almost down towards turn number 5. I think we are only going to get 26 laps, and our prediction originally was correct. We will not have time for a 27th lap here, so we're on the penultimate lap of the racing for this season. And Nils Corr right now in control up front, but the lead has been chiselled away. 3 attempts that last time around for Stuart Reynolds, a little bit more time taken out, but Corr right now 9. He's 2 laps away from that maiden win of the season, and a very valuable win that would see him in the overall Drivers' Championship coming home in 2nd place when all things are said and done. Provisioning, of course, but as he comes on through the corner, right now he can't think about that. He should start to think about staying out of trouble. As Ian Anderson, despite the front bumper missing, he's pushing onwards and chasing after Kim Such, and they're going to see if he can reclaim 6th place in AM and 13th overall with 2 laps remaining here. But Such, of course, will be wary of the fact he's got a contender coming up behind him, and will be getting ready to fight if he can't keep that gap to the best part of 2 seconds. These drivers right now all have to be absolutely commended for the brilliant racing we've seen thus far. We could still see a bit more battling before the end, but of course we are in the final throws here, and it's going to be tied arms and legs. I can only imagine how hot everyone's going to be feeling inside their cars as well. And one thing we didn't talk about today was the weather we're seeing here at Road America. Relatively cooler conditions, to be fair, and that is a very high wind speed of 11 miles per hour, but ambient of 19 degrees centigrade and 27 degrees track temperature, so a very welcoming circuit in terms of the grip levels out there, and definitely a bit of a helpful circuit for our drivers. Not too hot compared to what it could be. Of course, we are basing it on the sim settings that we did use back for the previous run of this round, but it had to be cancelled due to a conflict with the 2026 Season 3 iRacing update, which should see all the servers go offline for an extended period of time. And, well, we've made sure to keep things as they were, as the originally planned date of the race. We have not changed anything. But meanwhile, onto his final lap then. 1 lap to go here, and it's Nils Corr leading by 1.8 seconds. The gap has come down by 5 tenths there to Stuart Reynolds, and Reynolds is now picking up a distant toe here for Corr. But it's going to take a lot more than that. He needs to be within a second to really gain in the draft. He will gain a couple of attempts, but right now a couple of attempts is not going to help him. There's a 1.8 second gap to overhaul. I see Matias still there glued to the back of Reynolds. I do wonder if the few Super drivers will sit with second and third as they are, or whether they'll look to a switch right at the end. We'll have to see. But right now it does look as though all the battling is definitely calming. Although Mark Johnson, well, he's being caught by Austin Jennings. Another 3 attempts have been stripped out. Johnson right now trying to hold on for that second place finish in the AM class that would see him finish third in the AM Championship, and of course would be the gateway to ensure that Stephen Codman becomes your provisional AM champion, and indeed by only 2 points to Rob Sharp, who we see a bit further back, but Sharp right now getting his head down and seeing if he can make one last gasp here on this final lap to close the gap. But indeed, it's so tight here, and we're going to be so close to that 27th lap, but I think we're going to miss it by about 10 seconds in the end. We'll have to wait and see. Kim Such making his way across the timeline. There is the white flag waving, so there is your confirmation. We are on the final lap. Ian Anderson still chasing, but 1.5 seconds behind. He did have a bit of an off track towards the end of the previous lap. That's just curbed some of his momentum, and Such right now just trying to keep it together. But this is the lap where if you're running low on fuel, you're suddenly going to be feeling the pinch of the fuel tank. You'll suddenly hear the engine cough every so often, as it's not being fed as much fuel as it should be as part of the fuel flow. And right now, Nils Corr taking his way through Canada Bend. Stuart Reynolds still pushing on here with Matias right behind. But for Nils Corr, this is all looking to be shaping up to what will be an absolutely brilliant end to the season. And into last call they go. The clock strikes 0. This is the final lap. It's the final run to the finish line. And whilst he may have missed out at the Nürburgring, well, for Nils Corr, he's not going to miss the chance to take one win this season. He will end the season on high. Nils Corr wins here at Road America ahead of Matias, who retakes second off Stuart Reynolds. They switch the places back at the finish line. And then from them, it will be Penttilä Abdullahi who comes home in 4th place. And the Starlight Racing drive will make it a great end to the season for the team. Stephen Codman takes the AM win, but is it enough? There's Dennis Van Beelen. There is Mark Johnson in 2nd place in AM, and it's Daniel Stone, Chris Jennings, and it means as Rob Sharp comes to line 10th overall and 3rd in AM, Stephen Codman is your provisional Season 8 AM champion. He takes it in the end by 2 points, according to our calculations, and well, in the end by one of the smallest margins that we will ever see at SM, no doubt about it. We've still got a bit of time before we see other drivers coming through. Let's not forget about them. They all deserve a round of applause. There's been some brilliant drives this season, and indeed here today, Paul Goffin will bring home 4th place, an absolutely determined drive, no doubt about it, in a long fight with Ollie Carwadine, and he got the upper hand to the end, 4th place in AM, 11th overall. It'll then be Carwadine coming home in 5th place in the AM class, a solid drive there to complete his season on the top 5, and we're at 4th place in the AM Championship behind Mark Johnson, and well, we'll then see 11 seconds back to Kim Such, who has Ian Anderson huffing and puffing after him, with the damage to the car there of Ian Anderson. Unfortunately, he's going to run out of steam right at the very end. And Such will take 6th and 13th overall ahead of Ian Anderson. And then we will have a further 28 seconds behind in due time the finish of Heinz Mayer, and we also do still have Jules Gardner a little bit further behind him. But as we do see Heinz make his way through the last couple of quarters, well, the Rome-worthy driver definitely having a challenging day today after that instant coming out to turn 14 in the late stages, an instant that nobody could have predicted, to be fair. And Will for Heinz in the end just giving the tyre too wide, and it cost him a lot of places, it cost him time, so he gets the end and gets some points on the board in the season finale race. But lastly, of course, let's give this man a round of applause. He's not been on the pace today, but he's been out there. He's been looking lovely in the SRM livery machine, no doubt about that. And it is none other than Jules Gardner, our official photographer, who makes his way to the line. And well, he is an absolute perfect picture of what his racer spirit defined, as he does see himself home in 16th place, the last of your finishers of this race. We only lost one driver, and that was sadly Guy Edwards, that huge shunt with Ian Anderson. And unfortunately, the 67 Motorsport team not able to get the car repaired. But as Nils Corr calls on down, side by side with his teammate there of being Idris Abdullahi, this means for him it is 2nd second in the overall championship, and in the teams championship will Satellite Racing secure their status as the runners-up. Fury Simsport, of course, could not have the crown snatched from them today, and well, they'll be absolutely pleased as punch for that. But Stephen Codman right now with his teammate there, the Trackhouse race of Mark Johnson, as they both cool and calm them down, well, it will be that provisional crown for Stephen Codman. He's not going to believe it when he gets out the car and be told. And Trackhouse Racing will still third in the team championship from Paddock Motorsport, who in the end, with Daniel Oster taking that 8th place, it does go the way, I believe, of Trackhouse Racing by a slender margin. But as they all cool and calm them down and all the drivers weave their way back to the pit lane, let's look to the scenic view and with it, those race results. And as we can see, after a terrific 60 minutes of racing here for round 8 of 8 in Season 8 of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge, brought to you on iRacing here today from Road America, as powered by Aureus Digital, Nils Corr, your winner, finally taking the win, as escaped him all season long, and the Satellite Racing driver will know this one will feel precious, taking it by 2.3 seconds out of Fury Simsport Matias 10. For Corr, wanted to lead every lap of the race where possible. He knew how to get the most out of the Ford Mustang's power and its fuel tank, and Matias 10 in the Mercedes put up an absolutely brilliant battle, as did Stuart Reynolds, who came all the way through from 15th to 3rd, but in the end, well, Reynolds took the place off of 10 with the thought of seeing whether he could catch up to the Corr to help them both out, and gave the place back in. Great teamwork from the Fury Simsport drivers, and that's why they are your provisional teams champions for Season 8, no doubt about it, and why Reynolds is your overall drivers champion. Your defending champion has successfully completed that defence as round 7, and here today ends the season on a podium. Ben Idris Abdullahi, 4th there for Satellite Racing. He'll be very happy to finish inside that top 5, although a little bit upset perhaps not to stay with the leading trio, but still some good points here, and confirming Satellite Racing as your runners-up in the teams championship, with Stephen Codman there, 5th place overall, and the Trackhouse Racing driver bringing home his best result of the season overall, head of Dennis Van Beelen for Chicane Online Racing by the tune of 2.3 seconds. Mark Johnson, runner-up in AM there, 7th overall for Trackhouse Racing, a great end to his season after the frustrations he's had to carry through, and Daniel Oster there in the Porsche Paddock Motorsport, pushing so hard to chase the top 10. He earned it from the back of the field, starting in 17th place after no lap set in qualifying, but of course knowing his Porsche was always up against it today, and he gave it everything to be inside that top 10, and he achieved it. Half a second behind him was Chris Jennings there for Axis Sim Sports, with a 3-second gap back to Rob Sharp for Brewis Racing, 3rd in the AM class there, and then SRM's Paul Goffin, best of the rest in 11th, just behind him. Ollie Carbadine, he finished in 12th ahead of Kim Such, with Ian Anderson, Heinz Matt and Jules Gardner completing those who finished the race, all on the lead lap, and sadly it was a retirement from the race with 5 laps to go for Guy Edwards of 6-7 Motorsport, and not the end of the season he wanted. But then to the AM class we look, because of course we do have our AM Championship, where points are scored based on AM finisher position only, and there is your top 3. Stephen Codman, Mark Johnson and Rob Sharp, a 1-2 for Trackhouse Racing, a huge result for them, but for Stephen Codman, this is the result he needed, because of course, pole position, and then combine it together with the fact that he takes his first win of the season, and indeed it is his one and only win of the season, and equaling the score with Mark Johnson, his team at Trackhouse Racing. Well, Rob Sharp may have got 3 wins, but that 3rd place in the end sees him 2 points drift from Codman, and Codman steals away the crown right at the end, as we understand it. And then we do see Paul Goffin at 4th there for SRM, a further, what is 28 seconds behind, and well, it was Gotti Comedy who completed the top 5 for Rome Worthy. Aureus Racing's Kim Such in 6th, just fended off Ian Anderson. That late error unfortunately cost him plenty of places to see you next Tuesday, and it was Heinz Matt and Jules Gardner completing the AM standings. But what a race, ladies and gentlemen, and well, what an end to the season we had here at Road America, a race filled with strategy, filled with smart thinking, and in the end, well, we got to see a rather satisfactory conclusion for so many out there, and a huge congratulations to all of our drivers for a brilliant set of performances. But, of course, this broadcast is not quite over. The racing has stopped, but this broadcast is not, because coming up in approximately 5 minutes' time will be our final interviews of the season, so don't go anywhere. You won't miss them, and we'll get to hear some thoughts from our drivers on the final round of the season and what lies ahead with regards to their upcoming plans. We'll be right back as soon as we can. And well, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to kick off our post-round interview. So the final time this season. And to do so, of course, we kick off with the man who started off with what was a brilliant start, as we see there, and brought it on home as victory today. His only win of the season. And joining me now in the interview room is none other than Nils Corr. Nils, you finally made it happen. It's taken 8 rounds, but that win that has escaped you for so long, it has finally come to you. You must feel spectacular.
Yeah, good evening, Paul. Definitely a great feeling now. Unfortunately, I would obviously love if these wins come early in the season as well, but can't complain to end the season like this.
Oh, indeed, a great way to end the season. But like you say, wishing the wins could have come sooner. But here today, I mean,
probably say that every time, so definitely wasn't too unhappy about that.
Well, a decent lap, and then, of course, the race would be the big theme, of course. And, I mean, over the distance, we saw plenty of back and forth. But right at the start, Matias 10 went straight on the attack. Were you a bit surprised by that?
Not quite. I was taking it a bit too careful on the cold tires because the Mustang can be quite difficult on these. So I already lost some momentum going through the first turn. And from that point, yeah, I just had to almost give it up at one point to not lose more time.
Well, the back and forth we saw over the distance, I mean, whilst we did see Matias 10 gradually hand the lead back to you a little bit, or you looked as though you really wanted that lead come the end of the first stint, you were constantly fuel saving in a car that we know is very thirsty on fuel. I mean, how do you do it in that Mustang?
It's actually it's not that, I mean, you would think that the Mustang is thirsty on fuel, but with how the balance of performance is on iRacing currently, it's actually one of the better cars on this side. So it actually helps you when you just try to, I didn't have to lift all that much to get a decent mileage out of it.
Well, perhaps not as much fuel saving as we thought then, but what we also did see, of course, was the fact that it was typically a pack of 3 to 5 cars at the front, and particularly in the second and the final stint, you would be the lead car. Was that always the plan as the race went on, to be number 1 in that order?
I think that was probably the best thing I could have done, because especially in the first stint, after I was behind Matias for some time, he was making some mistakes and costing us quite some time. And I obviously knew that Stuart was coming through the field after not having a great quality himself. So there I decided I have to get ahead of him to keep the gap a bit bigger. And then once I had both of them right behind me, I thought I absolutely have to stay ahead of both of them, because I don't want to be in that sandwich, because I mean they're obviously in the same team, so they can work together, and it was a bit of a 2 versus 1 situation. So at that point I thought it's best if I just try to stay ahead somehow, and then hope that I have a good short last stop. And yeah, it all worked out in the end eventually.
Oh, indeed, it worked out well for yourself. And in that final stint, we did see you managing the gap. Originally, it was 3 seconds, and it gradually came down to around about 1.6 seconds on the final lap. Were you worried at all at any point that, say, the fuel tank would start to say it was running empty, or that the Fury Supersport tires would really close that gap down?
I was pretty confident that I had enough fuel, but I didn't really have much left on my tires because I had to push the whole race, even though I did take some left side tires on the first stop, but they were definitely not feeling great at the end. So I was just kind of trying to not make any mistakes and not lose too much time to them.
Well, the tyres definitely held quite nicely. We know you've had some difficulty with the tyres in previous rounds, and in the end, you've brought home that first win of the season, and a win as well that I do believe puts you second in the overall Drivers' Championship right at the very end. So a huge achievement to end the season on.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, Matthias Penttilä unfortunately wasn't able to attend today, so he couldn't defend his second place, but I'm still very happy about that result in the end.
Oh, indeed, a huge result in the end. And as we now look ahead to future seasons, of course, looking for what could be, say, Season 9 of the GT4 Challenge or anything else we may have planned here at Sim Racing Magazine, for the next season, what would you like to see if we opened it up to options?
Honestly, I haven't had much time so far to think about that, so we will discuss that, and then we will see what happens next.
Oh, fair play. Plenty of time ahead, and of course, we've got a summer break to come as well. And just before we do let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
Obviously, a massive thank you to my teammate Ben, all of Satellite Racing, and then obviously the whole SM community for just being awesome. Especially after we had to unfortunately delay the last round. Everyone was full of understanding, and mistakes happen, and we managed to get it done in the end. So just big thank you, and to you too as well for all the broadcasts, Paul.
Oh, indeed. I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Nils, with the understanding the community has shown for us to have to delay the season finally. But we've got there in the end, and we've seen you finally take that first win of the season right at the end. Thank you for joining me in the interview. We look forward to seeing you back out there for the next season. But until then, have a wonderful rest of your evening, and well done once again on a well-deserved win.
Thank you.
So here now, ladies and gentlemen, from Nils Corr, very happy with his performance, no doubt about it today. And we're talking out there the fact that in qualifying, he was pleased with the lap, but I know there's always more work that could be done, and definitely got his head down and got on with that work. Also mentioned the fact that the reality was the Mustang wasn't as first in fuel as perhaps we anticipated it to be, and it definitely did aid him to a degree with regards to the balancing of fuel saving versus going full attack. And his only real concern was towards the very end whether Fury Simsport would be able to reduce that gap down through the combination of Matias and Stuart Reynolds working together, but they couldn't quite do so, and also a bit of time management starting to make him a bit nervous at the end, but it all came together for a brilliant win. Not quite sure what's to come with regards to the next season of racing, but he's definitely going to be looking into it with the SRM admin team in the coming weeks and months, and indeed excited for what's to come, and at the same time as well, he's definitely earned himself a bit of a break after what has been a challenging end to the season, but he's ended it on a high with that win, and of course becoming your provisional Drivers' Championship run-up overall. But ladies and gentlemen, we've got some more interviews to come, and indeed we're not too long away from our second one. We'll be right back. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we now come to our second interview, staying with the pros, and it is the Fury Simsport's Matias who joins me in the interview room. Matias, good evening to you. What a race from yourself. Almost able to snag that win, but it wasn't quite enough at the end. But you gave it everything today.
Good evening, Paul. We threw everything and the kitchen sink at that, but Nils was a bit too strong today. He calculated well, especially with that last stop. We were close, but he managed to underfuel a little bit and take a bit less fuel. We were very surprised, actually. When he pulled out the box, I was still standing in the box, and I was like, how has he done this? The fuel economy of the Mustang actually appears to be quite good. I was talking with Nils a little bit just after the race. He was fuel saving little bits every braking zone, and generally that is my driving style as well, and I was doing the same as well. But I just couldn't save enough fuel even by sitting behind him, because early on the race start I overtook him in turn 2. It was a nice overtake, and he mentioned me making some little mistakes. They actually weren't little mistakes. They were actually small attempts to slow the pack down a little bit, to have people behind me start fighting and a chance to like maybe run away, because there's no way you're gonna break the toe here at this track. The draft is pretty strong, and if everyone's running a decent pace, you're not going to break the toe that easily. So that was my little attempt at breaking the toe. When that didn't work, I let him go back in front and try to save fuel behind him. But yeah, obviously, like everyone could see, the fuel economy of the Mustang was a bit strong.
Well, indeed, the fuel economy of the Mustang, like you say, stronger than perhaps anticipated. And let's talk a little bit about qualifying as well. We did see you trying to work with your teammate of Stuart throughout, but you put together a very good lap for second place. Something tells me you weren't too worried about being the pole sitter today. Perhaps the thought process was more, just get me on the front row and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, actually didn't want to be on pole, so that worked out pretty well. We were working together a little bit in the qualifying. A bit of shenanigans with Ben as well. He tried to snatch a toe of the both of us as well, so we had to slow down a couple times to and run away to get a gap and get the lap in, but managed to get it in. But yeah, we couldn't really fight for the win today, but it was good fun.
Oh, indeed, plenty of good fun to be had out there. And looking at your race, I mean, that start as well, the way the race started, I mean, Nils caught everyone out a little bit by going as soon as he did. But I mean, I think that you then caught him. You definitely caught me out on the broadcast by just suddenly going, you know what, I'll just go around the outside at turn number 3. Where did you find that confidence in the car?
I'm quite okay on cold tires. I warmed up my tires a little bit more before the race started as well than Nils did. And on cold tires, you can hang it around the outside there in that corner. It is a known thing. It's a bit risky, especially if there's dirt on the outside and stuff. But yeah, the racing here in this series is good and clean, and so I knew I could trust Nils to give me the space there, and hung it around the outside.
Oh, indeed. It was some very smart and also respectful driving, like you say, from yourself and Nils. And as the race went on, we did see you slip behind a little bit for the name of fuel saving. And like you mentioned there, being a bit surprised by what was Nils' ability in that Mustang and the car in general to be able to save so much fuel. At the end, we did see your teammate Stuart Reynolds come close, and the two of you did swap places. Was that to hope that Stuart might be able to find some pace that you could not?
Yeah, I took a left front tire on the last stop in a dire attempt to get a run on Nils, but then he, because we were close and in the toe, so that could have made a difference, and I think it would have made a difference because you could see in the last 2 laps we were closing rapidly on him, and that's because his tires were dropping off. So it would have worked, but he was better on fuel, and that won him the race at the end. We did swap positions at the end. Well, I told my teammate we don't need to, but he wanted to do it anyway because we were trying to get me 3rd place in the championship. I think I missed that by just 1 point to Matias, but he obviously can't defend it today, so it's all good.
Oh, indeed. So close there for you to try and take 3rd place in the championship. But, like you say as well, it's all good and all part of the fun sport, even with Matias Penttilä not here. But at the same time as well, for yourself and Stuart, teams champions for Fury Sim Sport, a big achievement. And while Stuart may have grabbed the headlines, you still grafted a lot of points along the way.
Yeah, we did. I had some good finishing positions. Stuart's been on a great level this season and last season as well. He's performing so well lately in the car, not only in SRM, just in our team. In other races we participate in as well. He's a quick lad, and yeah, he's a great teammate to have.
Oh, fantastic. And well, I'm sure he'll appreciate the admiration that you do have for him, and the teamwork between the two has been brilliant this season. But of course, what's next for yourself then? I mean, can we expect yourself and the team to be back for what we have planned for later on this year? We're not quite sure what it's going to be yet, but we are making plans.
Yeah, whatever SRM is planning on, we will be a part of it. We've been racing in SRM for a couple of years now, and we're all competitors, but the community feels a bit like family. It's a great community that races in this series, and the racing is hard but respectful. You can see that in the race today as well. I was mounting an overtake on Nils for the lead into turn 5. We touched slightly. It was a slight 0x touch. I watched the replay. Actually, wasn't worth to let him go back in front, but we race fair in this series, so we let him go back in front and continue to fight. And that's how it's done in this series, and we'll keep staying a part of that.
Oh, indeed. I agree with you there. The respect and the family, like you say, a huge draw of Sim Racing Magazine series. And, well, I'm 100% on board with that. And we look forward to seeing yourself and the team back for what we have planned later on this season. But just before we do let you go, Matias, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to?
Well, shout out to Stuart for winning the championship this season. And my teammates, of course, everyone helping with prep and practice. And the organization of SRM. You guys have done an amazing job. You as well, Paul, with the broadcast this year. So thank you for those as well. And we look forward to what SRM brings next season.
Oh, indeed. And we look forward to seeing yourselves back once again. We love having you on the grid. Matias, thank you for joining me in the interview. A brilliant drive today. Not quite the win, just short of third in the Overall Drivers' Championship. But you definitely kept us on our toes all the way to the end. And well done on the second place result. We'll see you in the seasons to come. But until then, have a lovely rest of the evening and a great summer ahead.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening.
So here and there from a happy Matias Tem, ladies and gentlemen. And to be fair, I think he's thrown everything at this one. Like he said, thrown everything, including the kitchen sink at it. Could not find a way to beat Nils Corr. And the biggest shock there, as Nils revealed to us, the Ford Mustang a lot more economical on its fuel compared to what everybody expected. And that really was the eye-opener. And that second pit stop, to see Corr come out the best part of what was 3 seconds ahead of the Fury Simsport cars. That was the deal breaker that Fury Simsport then had to overcome, but they could not find a way in. Great teamwork being shown by Fury Simsport all the way through, and we did hear there from Matias talking about the wider Teams Championship achievements and the fact they've worked so well together and they have taken that Teams Championship crown and had to really go for it. And while Stuart Reynolds, of course, taking the headlines with all those 5 wins, well, it also requires another driver there to pick up a lot of points, and Matias doing exactly that, and so close to third in the championship as well. You've got to feel for him, because I think he was a bit gutted there just to miss out, but he definitely enjoyed himself every step of the way, and, well, we look forward to seeing him back on the grid in a future season. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. We've got one more interview to come. Our final interview, I believe, for this season. And well, ladies and gentlemen, if we're going to speak to one Fury Simsport driver, why not speak to both of them, albeit separately today, because joining me now in the interview room is none other than Stuart Reynolds. Stuart, good evening to you. As far as the championship was going, it was all wrapped up. What was the best part of a month ago at the Nürburgring? So today, you've come here to do a bit of a last to first challenge by the looks of things. To be fair, you made it onto the podium and had a lot of fun by the looks of things.
Yeah, that was a very fun race to do. I might do it a little bit more often just to spice it up a bit.
Well, you definitely kept us intrigued and on our toes. Now, of course, no real pressure on yourself today because you've taken the Overall Drivers' Championship last round. Also, the Teams Championship was all wrapped up for yourself and Matias at Fury Simsport. What was going to be the secret then to coming through from the back of the field in that Mercedes?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't really gel with Road America, so I was quite surprised at the pace I had got. It was just making decisive moves at the start to get past the AMs and then just try and catch up to Nils and Matias.
We definitely made some critical moves early on, but of course, I can imagine it came at the cost of you being able to fuel save. You did pit on lap 9, which was the first lap that we did see a number of drivers pit on, but it looks like after that you were able to do a bit more fuel saving.
I'll be honest with you, I didn't do much fuel saving at all. I fuel saved a little bit behind people, but when I was in clear air, it was kind of like, right, I need to put my foot down and go for it. I overfueled in the final pit stop as well by probably a lap, so I think that's what put me, I think I was about 3 seconds behind Nils when he came out.
Oh, goodness me, a bit of overfueling there. That helps explain a bit of the picture. And with regards to what was the closing stage of the race. Already that middle stint, we saw you get into that lead group. But it looked so there, as much as you were pushing, you couldn't find your way further forward at that point than third or fourth.
I kind of just sat behind Matias because I wasn't quite sure what he was going to do. I think he was trying to fuel save more so that he could jump Nils in the pits. So I didn't really want to try and battle him to get up to Nils. So I just kind of left them to it, really.
Oh, I see. And, well, Matias was saying only moments ago that the pair of you seemed quite surprised when Nils came out the pit lane with a very short stop compared to you both. I mean, to be fair, it didn't stop you from giving it a go. You threw everything at it in second place.
Yeah, I was determined to try and catch him, but Nils just seemed to... That Mustang round here was just rapid, and he just did a fantastic job.
Well, he did look absolutely rapid, to be fair, and you no slouch. And, well, I did notice that you handed the place back to Matias, and I believe that was to perhaps help him see if he could take that third in the Drivers' Championship.
Yeah, but I don't think he'd quite got enough. I think Matias was 21 points, and I think for second place it's only 20, so just a little bit short.
Oh, indeed, you'd be spotting there, so just double-check the maths around it, but so close there. But in a sort of bigger picture scheme of things, what we did, of course, get to see this season was for yourself that overall Drivers' Championship, a successful defense. I mean, with the pressure that was put on you this season, to do it back-to-back, you must be really proud.
I am quite proud, and it's the first time I've ever done a back-to-back championship before. And it especially in a field that's so tightly contested, it's quite a surprise.
Well, perhaps a bit of surprise there, but then, of course, doing the double, taking the Teams Championship as well with yourself and Matias. Sound Racing kept you honest, although it did look as though it was always destined to go your way from the outset.
I don't know. With Matias, he does not finish some races, or he has other things going on, which we all do. So I think this time, he come back again to make sure that he actually participated more. But no, I don't know. I think it was tightly contested all the way through. So it's been a fantastic championship, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, well, it's absolutely been brilliant here that you've been enjoying the championship, both on the drivers level and the teams level. And of course, what's next for yourself and the team? Have you made any plans, or is the plan to come back for whether it's season 9 or whatever we've next got in store here at SRM?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we'll all be back again. Hopefully, probably all in the same car so that we can all tell each other what does what and stuff like that, so we can give each other tips and tricks, because with the other two driving the Porsche, it's obviously a different car, and I don't really drive the Porsche, so I can't really help them.
Oh, fair play. And just on that, of course, we have had Paddock Motorsport, the two Dans, Daniel Perry and Daniel Oster, racing this season. They perhaps haven't had the highlights that you've had, although, to be fair, we did see Dan Perry take that win at VIR. But are there more Fury Supersport drivers to come then, or is it just the four of you perhaps in the future?
We've got a few. We'll see if we can drag a few more in, just to bump the numbers up a little bit more as well. But yeah, you could see quite a few more Fury guys come through.
Oh, fantastic. It'd be great to see all of you coming together. I mean, I'm sure you all have to be dedicated to specific teams, otherwise we'd have Fury Supersport 1, 2, 3 each week, but you never know, to be fair. But what we do know is that you've had a brilliant season, and just before we do let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
Obviously you for doing the broadcast. You do a fantastic job with it. Also the organisers of SRM, they've done a fantastic job again, and obviously Abruzzi, our sponsor for our team.
Well, Stuart, it's been an absolute blast having you on the grid round after round, giving it your all, and in the end, you've stood tall at the end of the season, much like in Season 7. Congratulations on becoming a two-time champion and successfully defending your crown. We'll see you in our next season of racing, but until then, have a lovely rest of your evening, and congratulations on both the Drivers' Championship and the Teams' Championship.
Thank you very much, Paul. Have a good evening.
You too. So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Stuart Reynolds, our final interviewee of the season. And well, pleased as punch with what we've been able to achieve. And talking about the fact here today, it was all about starting from the back and having a bit of fun with it. And a circuit he's not too comfortable with, Road America, and in the end, he absolutely just went for it. And it worked out very nicely, as we do see the replay footage there of him making the move for what's none other than third place on Guy Edwards in the second stint. But for Reynolds, it really was push all the way. And he didn't do too much fuel saving. The only fuel saving he did do was when he found himself entrenched in this pack, in this quartet. He was able to get a little bit of fuel saving in behind his teammate Matias 10. But the big shot, much like Matias said, was about the fact that Nils Corr in the end proved to be doing so much fuel saving in a Ford Mustang that was not as thirsty on fuel as everyone thought it would be. And that enabled what was Corr to be able to outsmart the Fury Sim Sport team on strategy, although admitting there did Stuart the fact and that he was allowed to get ahead into the final stint in order to try and chase down Nils and not let him have it his own way, but in handing the place back in order to enable Matias Tem to get the most possible points to see if he could steal away what was that third place in the Drivers' Championship. It didn't quite work out, but a single point was the difference. But still, if they were going to enable Matias to have an opportunity to do so, the team went with it, and Stuart definitely a big component of that, and that has been the really big theme for this season for Stuart Reynolds. He's been a very fair racer as an individual, and he's also been a very team-orientated racer, even if he's had to try and encourage, in his own words there, Matias to attend all the rounds and give it his all, but at the same time, that's what the team's all about. And we're also mentioning that Paddock Motorsport there, a sub-team from Fury Sim Sport, and there may be a few more Fury Sim Sport drivers on the grid for a future instalment of racing, and we'd love to see that here at SRM. But at the same time as well, pleased with his achievements, and nobody can take anything from our Fury Sim Sport winner, because he definitely has proven to be the best of the best for this season. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our interviews for today, and let's give you a quick recap of who exactly we've spoken to. And here they are on screen. And as we can see, we started off in the Pro Class, and that's where we stayed for all three of our interviews. Speaking firstly with Satellite Racing's overall Drivers' Championship runner-up, Nils Corr, taking his one and only win of the season in brilliant style in the end, winning on pace and strategy. Then we came to Matias Tem, the run-up today in the race for Fury Sim Sport, team's champion driver, and in the end, fourth place in the Drivers' Championship. And then we came to your number one driver, the defending champion, who has completed his title defence with a round to spare at the Nürburgring, and also part of the team's champions of Fury Sim Sport, Stuart Reynolds there, going from 15th to 3rd and having plenty of fun along the way to send off his season on a high. A big thank you to all three of our drivers there, speaking to our overall podium. It's brilliant to be able to speak to all of them. We haven't normally done that this season. We normally had a variety of drivers, but here we've spoken to our overall podium finishers. A big thank you to them for their time. Well done to them for their performances. And of course, a big thank you to all the drivers who volunteered for interviews this season. Regardless of where they finished, it's been great to speak to so many different drivers and hear the stories of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge Season 8 as the season has gone on. But with that, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know how you can get on the grid here at Sim Racing Magazine, well, the best thing to do is join the official Discord. Invite link available on screen there. Indeed, we'd love to see you join. We've got big plans underway already for our next season of racing. We are still figuring out all the details. It may not necessarily be GT4, so if you're sat there right now thinking, I want a GT4 series, we don't want to disappoint you. We may be slightly changing up the format. We are looking for a bit of variety at Sim Racing Magazine. That's not saying we're going to retire the GT4 change, but just to be cautious, we are looking into multiple plans at the moment, so therefore just set your expectations appropriately. But either way, whether it is to get on the grid for GT4s or another series, do join the Discord, because you won't find a more welcoming and more gentlemanly racing community out there when it comes to iRacing. I can promise you that, and we'd love to see you, whether you're an esports professional all the way through to a rookie racer. We'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our series sponsor, Oris Digital, and we'll tell you a bit more about them. Small teams can make a huge impact in the digital marketing and e-commerce space, and Oris Digital knows that best. With 20 years of collective experience in growing businesses through online marketing channels via the provision of services that include affiliate management, Amazon marketing, and digital strategy, Oris Digital delivers tangible results to its clients. And if you'd like to know more about how Oris Digital can help grow your business, be sure to head to their website today at www.oris.digital. But we'd also like to take the opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, before we do sign off for the season, to say a shout out to one of our series partners, and that is Boris Watch. Now, one of our drivers, Rob Sharp, runs a Boris Watch, which designs and markets watch faces for smartwatches running Google's Wear OS operating system. This SRM-themed watch face is available on the Google Play Store by just searching for GT4C, the one you do see on screen here. It features a pit board that includes your race position, which improves as you near your step target for the day, a racetrack with selectable colours for each sector, and the trademark SRM branding, along with other useful information such as heart rate, so you can manage your excitement level in the next SRM race. And indeed, do go check out Arboris watches, because if you'd like to know more about them, do head to their website, www.arboris.com, to find out everything you need to know to get Arboris watches, watch faces for smart watches on your watch. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'd also like to give a shout out to our other series partner, Roamworthy. Buying the perfect caravan, motorhome or camper van can be an activity which leaves you going around in circles, but not with Roamworthy. Built by technology people who love the road, Roamworthy provides you with the tools you need to put you in the fast lane to buying the caravan, motorhome or camper van, which meets your requirements via a website that is packed with real stock and no pushy sales personnel. And if you'd like to know more, be sure to head to www.roamworthy.co.uk today. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is all we've got time for today. That has been Season 8 of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge. It's sad that I have to say that because it's been such a great season. Yes, our season finale was delayed, but it was worth waiting for, no doubt about it. And we can promise you one thing. We will be back here at SRM for plenty more racing action later this year. We are going to take a bit of a summer break at the moment. We are in the midst of a heat wave here in the UK and indeed on the European continent. So we are going to take a bit of a break to get through the heat wave. But when we come back, we'll be coming back fiery hot with plenty more racing. Will it be GT4s? Will it be a different class? You'll have to wait and see, but make sure you join our official Discord, and we showed you that invite link earlier on in this broadcast wrap-up, so therefore wind back the broadcast if you need to, but that's how you can get on the Discord and also stay up to date with all the latest news as it comes out for our next season of racing action. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Season 8 of the GT4 Challenge. We have our provisional champions. Overall, of course, Stuart Reynolds, a two-time champion in the AM class, none other than Stephen Codman, who we'd love to have got an interview with, but unfortunately he wasn't available to do so. I do believe he's gone to take a bit of a bath to cool himself down after it's been such an intense end to the season. And we had our team's champions as well of Fury Sim Sport, that being Stuart Reynolds and Matias. Congratulations to our champions, all well deserved, and a big congratulations to all drivers who have been on the grid for a single rounder all the way through the season. They've given us plenty of exciting racing action, but sadly the curtain comes down on the GT4 Challenge Season 8. We have been Sim Racing Magazine. Thank you very much for tuning in, whether it's been from the start of the season to the end or just today. You've all been stars tuning in on a fortnightly basis. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh. You've been tuning to Paul Walsh Production. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling. We'll see you in the upcoming season, ladies and gentlemen. And remember, as always, much like our drives, most importantly, to stay on track. Good night.